All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the public meeting of the Halton District School Board for March the 2nd, 2022. So as this is the first meeting of the month, I would like to take a moment to recognize that March has been recognized in Ontario as Bangladeshi Heritage Month. Ontario is home to a large and vibrant Bangladeshi community. Bangladeshi Canadians from across the province have made significant contributions to Ontario's scientific, athletic, cultural, and political development, and they continue to help foster growth, prosperity, and innovation throughout Ontario. The month of March is an important one for the Bangladeshi community. Every year on March 26th, Bangladeshis around the world celebrate Independence Day in commemoration of their nation gaining independence in 1971. Through the official recognition of March as Bangladeshi Heritage Month, Ontario has made a commitment to honor the many significant contributions Bangladeshi Canadians have made throughout the province, strengthening the multicultural fabric that keeps our community strong. We at the Halton District School Board reaffirm this commitment and further strengthen our commitments to our multi-year plan. The Halton District School Board is committed to champion supportive and inclusive practices, ensuring equitable access to positive opportunities and outcomes for all through the celebration of diversity and implementation of culturally responsive instruction and anti-oppressive practices. Thank you. As per our public health recommendations, we are meeting remotely this evening. And as we continue to meet virtually, we continue to use a combination of Google Forms and functions in Google Meets. With the hands up function, trustees are able to see the speakers list to the side of their screen, and I will try to give an account of the order that may be building so people are able to prepare their questions in advance. Trustees will be directing all their questions through the chair, remembering our meeting rules of the roads, as well as recent training to guide us through our meeting to effectively deal with the business of the board. We have also adjusted some of our voting procedures to use unanimous consent. So I will now take roll call in the traditional alphabetical order today. Trustee Amos.
Good evening, everyone.
Trustee Bao.
Good evening, everyone.
Trustee Collard.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Trustee Danielle.
Thank you, I am here.
Vice Chair Al Harrison.
Hello.
Trustee Garrett.
Happy to be here.
Trustee Gray.
Hello from the hills.
Trustee Grabentz.
Hi, everyone.
Trustee Oliver.
Good evening, everyone.
Trustee Reynolds.
I am present.
Trustee Rocha.
Hello from Oakville.
And Trustee Vigilankara.
Hi, everyone.
Great, thank you so much. Director Ennis, could you please let us know staff that are attending this evening?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Chair Shuttleworth. We are happy to have a full slate of senior staff here this evening to support the board meeting.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. So this evening, Trustee Oliver will be honoring the land.
Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis. From the Anishinaabe to the Audouindaron, the Haudenosaunee, and the Métis, these lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions: land, waters, plants, animals, ancestors that walked before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us.
Thank you, Trustee Oliver. Are there any declarations of possible conflict of interest tonight? Seeing none, we are now up to the agenda. Trustee Gray, would you like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
And Trustee Grabantz, would you like to second this motion?
I would be happy to.
Is there any discussion? Okay, so are there any objections to approving the agenda this evening? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. So we are now up to the Inspire Awards. An Inspire Award is given to an individual or group that is formally or informally associated with the Halton District School Board, who support our students and their achievements through exemplary caring, initiative, innovation, and creativity. Tonight, we have 4 awards to present, which represent the nominations for February. Trustee Grabens will be running the presentation created by Heather Francie in the Communication Department. Now, before each presentation, I will name the recipient and the name of the trustee presenting. And this evening, we will be starting with Kimberly Mullen, who is from Nelson High School, and I will be presenting it to her. So Kim Mullen is a health tech teacher at Nelson High School. She is known for taking the time to get to know all of her students and encouraging them to do and be their best. Kim inspires students to think about their future and what steps to take to achieve their goals. Not only does she encourage the kids to do their best, she offers ideas and help for them to be successful. She guides them on a career path and gets them thinking about the future. She leaves little notes on students' desks to let them know that they are important. Students say just a short note saying, "You matter," makes a huge impact. Kim's teaching style encourages mutual respect within the classroom. She has a way of motivating students to participate and keeps them engaged in learning through her sense of humor. Parents commend Kim for her uplifting attitude and ability to build students' confidence in their abilities. One parent has actually said, "I find it amazing how one teacher can inspire a kid to make so many changes and view school as fun and a challenge rather than a chore that they have to get through." Thank you so much, Kim, for your work at Nelson. Next up, we have Sabrina Naidoo, and Trustee Danielle will be presenting.
Thank you. It's my honor to present this Inspire Award to Sabrina Naidoo. Sabrina Naidoo is a student at Milton District High School. She is known for her genuine character and being someone who always looks out for others, is extremely hardworking, and consistently goes out of her way to improve her school community. Sabrina selflessly commits many hours each week to the student government at Milton District High School, as well as student senate for the board, demonstrating an unwavering commitment to bettering her school community. Within her student government role, she brings innovative and creative ideas to new and exciting initiatives. She helped start the Winter Candygram Drive, with profits going to support lower income families. Through her involvement in Link Crew, Sabrina went above and beyond to help incoming grade 9 students feel welcome and have a smooth entry to high school. Her peers say she is an inspiration to them and commend her for her innovative and creative ideas to continuously improve her school community. Congratulations, Sabrina, and thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you, Trustee Danielle. Next, we have Peter Collinson, and Vice Chair Harrison will be presenting.
Thank you so much, and I'm very excited to be presenting this award to Peter Collinson. Peter's a teacher at Eastview Public School. He always goes out of his way to ensure that all students feel welcome, comfortable, understood, and respected. Parents are grateful to Peter for increasing their children's confidence in their academic abilities and helping them to strive for success using fun and experiential learning tools. Peter takes the time to get to know each student's learning style and interests. He is an advocate for student success, ensuring students have what they need to thrive in all of their classes. Parents commend Peter for not only helping their children achieve success academically, but also emotionally, helping them with skills like independence, self-assurance, and finding joy at school. Thank you, Mr. Collinson, Peter, for your work, your smile, your collaborative, caring, and impactful approach. You are indeed an inspiration.
Thank you, Vice Chair Harrison. Next up, we have Allison Yates, and Trustee Amos will be presenting.
It's my honor to present the Inspire Award to Allison Yates. Allison is a teacher at White Oak Secondary School, and this nomination is for her role as a teacher in the virtual school secondary. Allison is a genuine, kind-hearted, and thoughtful person who takes the time to chat with students and get to know them and their interests. As a self-paced teacher at the virtual secondary school, Allison goes above and beyond to assist students in their individual courses. Not only does she engage her class with fun attendance activities to start each period on a positive note, she takes time to emphasize the importance of their physical and mental health by participating in wellness Wednesdays. She consistently checks in with students to see how they are progressing in their courses and offers help and support. Students appreciate how Allison commends them on their efforts through constructive feedback and encouragement. It is clear that she is personally invested in each of her students' success and strives for them to be the best versions of themselves. As one student says, Mrs. Yates' class continues to be the highlight of my school day because I look forward to talking to her and getting to complete fun yet educational projects that allow me to explore my creativity and think outside of the box. She has completely made my first online high school semester during a pandemic far more enjoyable than I could ever imagine. Congratulations, Allison. You are an inspiration to us all.
Thank you, Trustee Amos, and also thank you, Trustee Grabentz, for manning the slideshow. Congratulations to all of our Inspire Award recipients for your outstanding support of students in the Halton District School Board, promoting and supporting their achievement and well-being. A special thank you to Susan Thrasher in the Director's Office, who every month works to ensure trustees have all they need to assess the nominees. For everyone watching this evening, please continue to nominate people or organizations who support our students and their achievement through their exemplary caring, initiative, innovation, and creativity. The nomination form is available on the hdsb.ca website. Everyone in the Halton District School Board community can nominate or be nominated. Families, neighbors, related organizations, staff, students, and school volunteers. These nominations are then reviewed by the trustees to ensure that they are truly inspiring. And again, thank you so much for all our inspiration this evening. We are now up to section 2.2, which is our delegations. And this evening we have two delegations. Rod Mclaughlin and Sonia Doherty are our delegates present this evening. I'm not sure. Rod McLaughlin or Sonia Doherty, are either of you? Oh, there, I see Rod, you were there. Oh, awesome, there's Rod.
Sorry, there's a little bit of a delay between the stream, so.
That is no problem. So you are going to be going first this evening. So I'm just gonna go over the rules, sort of the outline for you, just so you have a reminder. So you have 5 minutes for your presentation to the board. I don't know if you can see or not, but Trustee Grabentz is going to put a timer up, and I will give you a verbal warning at the 1 minute mark. So please, we really ask that you be mindful and respectful of this time. Following the delegation, I will open the floor up to the trustees for about 10 minutes if they have any questions of clarification to ask you or staff. I will notify you, as I said, when the minute is left. And do you have any questions before you begin?
No, I'm just going to share my screen if that's okay.
That is wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to pull up my timer for you as well, so I have it. And whenever you are ready to start, you may begin.
Okay, I'm just going to call this up here. Can everyone see that?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and trustees, Director, and Senior Administrators. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Rod McLaughlin, and I am a community volunteer and a leader for several Milton organizations, but tonight I'm presenting as a private citizen. This is the third time that I'm presenting in Mike's behalf, where he's been a finalist, the first time being in 2011 and the second time in 2013. I'll start by saying, what if I could give you a name that is safe? This individual's passed away 11 years ago, provides pride, meaning, legacy, and history to inspire students, someone of renown and historical significance from Milton. That's Mike. The purpose of this presentation is to recommend that you give consideration to the naming of the latest Halton District School Board Elementary School in Milton for former school board chairman and trustee James Michael Ledwith. I will begin by highlighting his various achievements and attributes that were evident throughout his long life and which I feel make him worthy of this honor. Mike was an immigrant. I'll start with that. Just like many of the new Canadians that will be attending this school, he volunteered at the tender age of 19 to leave his parents and bravely serve in the Royal Navy from 1943 to 45. He said that his father actually cried at the train station, but Mike said that he felt excited at the prospect of seeing the world. This fearlessness is a hallmark of his lifelong achievements. His military kit is actually proudly displayed in the Royal Canadian Legion in Milton. His integrity and ethics, coupled with his inventiveness and courage, shone through. Mike was actually ahead of his time, and he was an innovator. He opened Ledwith Super Save grocery store in Milton back when there weren't big grocery stores, and he grew it, and he delivered direct to your door, and he actually put cold items straight into your fridge. He was Milton's Amazon or Milton's grocery gateway before that even existed. He was also a mentor, though, too. Bill Curry was a real estate agent for Remax Milton. He wrote, "Mike was such an important part of young people's lives, and he was my first employer at Ledwith Super Save in 1963. Mike helped mold me into the successful business person that I became, and I trusted him to model after his character." Lori McNabb is a past president of the Milton Legion. She said that many of the Milton students that had jobs at his store, he started them off on the right track for their working careers with dignity, honesty, and dedication. Mike provided leadership as well throughout his life. Sandy Martin is the former executive director of the Milton Chamber of Commerce. She said Mike epitomized leader, volunteer, ambassador, and he had the highest of ethics throughout his entire business life. He was a man of his word, and a firm handshake often sealed the business transaction. Mike also served on the Milton District Hospital Board, and he was actually chairman at the time of the hospital's first expansion in 1967. And he was instrumental in fundraising to complete the new building. He was ahead of its time again here. He came up with the foundation. He was a founder of the Hospital Foundation, which was innovative and ahead of its time, which I understand this school is going to be sort of cutting edge. Miltonians will also remember that it was Mike who was the chair of the Rotary Park Pool Committee, which is a legacy that still exists to this day, and it was part of the volunteers that sold peanuts door to door to raise significant funds for its construction. He provided leadership by example. This is an important one. He was an educator and a mentor. He was a member of the school board of Milton in 1950 to 56, and he was chair from 1954 to 55. All of the elementary schools that were open during that time are still in operation today, including J.M. Denye's, which was the first school in 100 years. You guys have a template that you're following to crank out these schools, but they didn't have a template because it hadn't been done in 100 years with J.M. Denye's. So that was a pretty impressive legacy by Mike.
Just under 1 minute.
Mike was also Milton Citizen of the Year in 1964, and he was again Senior Citizen of the Year in 1998 and in 2010. The Milton community constantly turned to him for unpaid leadership. There was no 40-hour checkbox for volunteerism in Mike's life. He was a lifelong volunteer. He was a champion for education. He was president of the Evergreen Cemetery. He did big things and small things for over 65 years. He was a Historical Society volunteer as well. There's his Senior of the Year award. Mike did a number of things as well on the humanitarian side.
I'm sorry, Mr. McLaughlin, your time is up.
Okay. Can I just give a quick conclusion? Really quickly? In conclusion, the initiative to nominate the name of Mike Ledwith for the new elementary school has received expressions of support from numerous organizations and individuals. I'll show them right here. Some of them include the Chamber of Commerce, the cultural centers, the historical societies, and so forth. All I'll say in conclusion is that what you're doing here is powerful, and it's going to send a message to volunteers, all these organizations, that what Mike did and what we're all doing, what you're doing, actually matters.
Thank you, Ms. McLaughlin. Trustee Danielle, you have a question.
Thank you very much. Actually, my question, because I noticed that you were getting to the end of your presentation without having the opportunity to mention the number of organizations that support it. So my question was going to be which of those organizations, but not being it, since you've already answered that, I guess I would look to you, Rod, because you know that I had the opportunity to meet Mr. Ledwith before I was a trustee, actually, and do an article on him for the local newspaper. And certainly his list, his pedigree of everything that he's done is absolutely awe-inspiring and overwhelming. But you touched on it very briefly. If you could just give us a little more detail on how, because for me, naming a school is one of the most important things we could do, and it's a name that has to carry for generations. And if you could just touch a little bit more on why a school named after Mike Ledwith, what we could do with that educationally, not just for people around the table now that knew him, but for 20, 30 years from now, people who would not have known him, what do you think that impact would be?
Well, I thank you for the question. First of all, I think that, because he has such a tremendous legacy in Milton, there's an educational opportunity for students at this future school. For example, like I mentioned, he was a veteran. So, for example, Remembrance Day, there's an opportunity to learn about a veteran from Milton right there. And I think there's numerous examples of organizations that he was involved in that would allow participation from those organizations, right? Because he was involved in so many organizations across, business, education, the community service, community leadership, education. It's actually endless. When I look at the list of organizations that he was involved in, I think that it's just inspiring. I think I alluded to the part that, there's students check off, 40 hours of community service, but we want them to be lifelong volunteers. I'm a lifelong volunteer. I know a lot of you people are. You're doing things that are thankless and don't go with pay or very little pay for commensurate with what you're doing. So I think that Mike provides an example of leadership and service to the community that is a real educational opportunity, I think.
Thank you, Rod.
I didn't have my mic on. Thank you very much. Are there any more questions of clarification for Mr. McLaughlin? I hope I'm saying your last name right.
You are.
Awesome. Great. That makes me happy. All right. Well, thank you so much for your delegation this evening. Just so you're aware, the decision for Milton, naming for Milton High School will be discussed, or the names will be shortlisted during our action items for March 23rd. And the names will actually be decided on at our next meeting. So you are more than welcome to continue watching our meeting through the live stream link. And again, thank you so much for bringing your voice to the table.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
All right, next up, we have Dr. Sonia Dougherty, who is accompanied by Ileana Kalinowski.
Yeah.
And let's see if I get this one right, Janet Linguri.
Perfect.
Awesome. So thank you very much. Again, I'm going to remind you that you will have up to 5 minutes for your presentation to the board. Trustee Rebens has a timer displayed, and I will try to give a verbal warning at the 1 minute mark. Please be mindful and respectful of this time. Following the delegation, I will open the floor to trustees for up to 10 minutes of questions of clarification to either you or staff. Again, I will try to remind you that you have 1 minute left. And do you have any questions before we start?
Yeah, can we share our PowerPoint?
You should be able to.
Okay.
If you have problems, let me know.
I might. I think Janet's better at tech than I am.
Okay.
And Dr. Dougherty, can you see the timer?
I can, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Whenever you're ready.
Oh.
It looks like she's got.
We lost it.
She had been removed before and then got back in, so I think she'll try to get back in now.
There we are.
Okay.
We lost you for a second.
Sorry, got booted off there. That doesn't come off my time, does it?
No.
Okay, I will try again. And here's the slideshow. Questions are going to be answered by Dr. Dougherty after I'm just presenting on her behalf.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for taking the time to listen to this presentation today about the efficacy of masks. Pre and early pandemic data. SickKids guidance in 2020. Initially, SickKids did not recommend mandatory masking. There's limited data on children wearing non-medical masks.
Okay, so I'm going to jump in. I assume our minutes are we paused here or? Oh,
okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Should I continue, Sonia?
Yes, you should.
Okay, SickKids warned of concerns about improper mask wearing, concerns about harms of masks negatively impacting learning, social interaction, and communication. Sorry, my slide has frozen here. Let me just try this one more time, guys.
Thank you. She stopped the timer for you.
Thank you. SickKids contributors did not come to a consensus and yet continued to not recommend masking young children. The benefit of children wearing non-medical masks was theoretical. Research done on healthcare workers had already shown non-medical masks did not work and carried safety risks. Real-world data. Children are at low risk of SARS-CoV-2. Unvaccinated children have a similar risk to the seasonal flu, and vaccinated children have virtually no risk of severe outcome. Educators are protected by vaccination. Old age groups are protected by boosters, and children are experiencing alarming levels of depression, anxiety, eating disorders, self-harm, and suicide as a result of masking. Children's learning, social interactions, communication skills are being negatively impacted as a result of masking. Student masking has not scientifically been established in real-world use. Well-controlled real-world studies have not demonstrated any clear benefit of masking. Academic studies confirm the result of government studies on school mask efficacy. Many provinces, states, countries have stopped mandatory masks for children in schools without causing an increase in transmission, infections, hospitalizations, or deaths. Moving to a mask optional policy is an important next step. SickKids stated children improperly wear masks and cited studies that show children do not wear them properly, and it would be extremely difficult for a child to wear it for long periods. And sadly, punishments from teachers have been done to children, having their mask break taken away, standing against a wall, notes, emails home, being shamed in front of their classmates and getting yelled at. Some schools enforce mask wearing during recess, and children are being forced to wear during exercise. Other experiences, mandatory masking is negatively impacting children's school experience and their relationship with educators. Some alarming examples from educators, and these are from children that were hearing these stories. Put your mask up in between bites of food, grade 4-5. If you pull your mask down, I could get COVID and my father has cancer and he would die, grade 6-7. Put your mask on as the teacher recoiled in horror. My sister had COVID and I had to go to the hospital, or she had to go. You're going to kill me, grade 9 class, etc. And now I want to leave you with a video. I want to let these children's voices be heard, and you can hear the stories themselves.
Masking makes me feel like trapped and hard to breathe, and I don't like it. I can't hear my friends either.
Makes me feel sad and unhappy, and sometimes that's how I get a headache.
It hurts my face, and I can't breathe, and I get really dizzy. So I make an excuse to go to the bathroom so I can take off my mask in the bathroom. Nobody can see me.
Sometimes it gets me suffocated, sort of, and feel claustrophobic, and I don't like that. And I like to see my friends' faces too. I like to talk to them and see like their expressions on their face. I just don't like the tags. I don't like how I can breathe inside. It just feels like I'm not my real me at school.
So thank you for the time for listening to the presentation, and all questions can be directed to Dr. Dougherty.
Thank you very much. All right, so I'm now going to open the floor for questions of clarification from trustees. Do any of the trustees have any questions of clarifications? Trustee Kubanis.
I do. I know this sounds weird, you're talking to a timer, but are you aware that as recently as February 28th, so Monday of this week, that the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, the Children's Hospital in London, SickKids Hospital, McMaster's Children's Hospital, as well as some other children's hospitals, and have actually restated that they would like masking to continue in schools at this point?
So our goal with this delegation was threefold: to cover the pre-existing literature, which is very clear. That's stated in all of the SickKids reopening guides. The literature, some of it, we provided excerpts from the SickKids guides. The other ones you can access, and I encourage you to read through them. So the pre-existing pandemic research was very clear. Non-medical masking is not an effective way to stop people from getting sick because it's not a form of source control. So you guys, I'm sure, are more than familiar with this, but source control is when I wear something to protect you. So there's no, well, they say limited data, and they say it over and over in the SickKids reopening guide. There's limited data to support masking children because as a form of source control. So then we look at the real world data, and there's no evidence to support that children wearing masks is effective as source control. Doesn't stop transmission, doesn't have any impact on hospitalization or deaths. So we have those two really important factors. I think the most important, hopefully we would all agree, is that now we understand that there's harms from non-medical masks. We have negative impacts on learning, we have negative impacts on school experience, we have negative impacts on social interaction. Children are anxious, they're being asked to carry a burden where there's no literature to support it. There's a 300% increase in speech delay, and there's no literature to support this use. So I think it's really important when we're making decisions based on science. And I absolutely understand at the beginning of the pandemic, it was a very confusing, stressful, upsetting time. We now have real world data that shows that these masks are not working and that they're causing harm. And one of the things that I think is important is that many, many children, in fact, I would say the majority of children, don't want to wear the masks. They feel like they have to. They feel like they're being forced to. They have not been asked if they want to wear masks. A mask optional option provides the ability for families who want to continue masking to make that choice. For families who don't want to make that choice, it's supported by the literature. They're not going to harm the people in the classroom. That's been shown by the medical literature throughout the world. So most teachers are vaccinated, so they're protected. If there are teachers who are in the older age groups, the booster protects them. So we have protected groups, and then we have one group, the children, who are suffering harm. And so I think we need to ask ourselves, what are we going to do to get these masks off these kids if they don't want to be wearing them, if they're causing harm? So how do we have a stratified risk approach or an individual risk approach that says, here's a group of children who are not at risk, they should have the mask optional option. And if you go through the literature with the reopening guide, which is what the Halton District School Board relied on heavily for their masking policy, there was no recommendation to mask children from kindergarten to grade 3. And yet children from kindergarten to grade 3 are masked. And as you all know, social interaction is 90% nonverbal. This is creating a catastrophe of speech delay. And I would argue that we're going to see developmental delay come on the heels of that. when you cover most of the social interaction, you're going to have children have social issues with that. And I've seen literature, which I can certainly provide to you, and talks about empathy, anxiety, lower self-esteem when we can't see someone's face. Social interaction, also in the SickKids guide, was really, really important, right? Children interact with each other, and that's a part of their childhood. And so they've had 2 years of their childhood significantly impacted in terms of being traumatized. And we need to do whatever we can based on literature to move them forward to the next steps. We're not the only province in Canada. Other provinces have done this successfully. The United States has many provinces who weren't masking children in schools. They've had no increase in transmission, no increase in hospitalizations, no increases in deaths. So again, we have 3 groups. The vulnerable group is wearing masks, and it's showing it's harming them. So I'll stop, and that's why Janet did the presentation, because I don't think I could stick to 5 minutes very well, as you can see, but I love your questions, and this is essential. As adults, we're supposed to stand up for our children, okay? The masks are harming them. They should have a choice. They should have a voice.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
I'm probably scared them away from questions.
No, I have a question, but I'll let you.
I don't think they're going to be here all night if I keep talking.
I don't have a question for you, but so Vice Cheryl Harrison, you first.
Okay, I had 2 things. Thing number 1, you said it's important for the students to have a voice. So I just wanted to know whether you wanted to defer to the person sitting to you for a brief commentary on this issue, because I can say that it is very divisive in this community. I get emails on both very polar and very passionate in both requests, both ends, and also both citing scientific or medical professions and so on. So not being a medical person myself, but a researcher, I'm curious to know how we bring those things together for the best possible public policy. And also, we're not the ones making this policy, it's made at the province. But anyway.
Well, I think that you're a group of people who has a strong voice and can advocate for our children. And I think that when you look at the different opinions, I've shared the information where it's come from in terms of our delegation to get us closer to a mask optional approach. And this is, I feel, when the 2 sides are this far apart, I mean, no one's going to be entirely thrilled, right? But I think personal choice and making sure that we understand our personal risk of COVID now that people are protected, right? We're not going into a school in a situation where we're putting teachers at risk or educators at risk or other children at risk. So I think that part of the literature is extremely important to include in this decision making, and thank God we're at that point in this pandemic. But yeah, do you want to talk?
Sure, if they have any questions.
Well, why don't you talk about your day? Because one of the things Ileana says is that my life has become about masks. It's all the teachers talk about. We get yelled at, they're upset, they're scared. This is something that's upsetting people that I don't think needs to be. If we understood that they're not a mitigating strategy, right? If we understood that they're not stopping transmission, I think we could move away from that fear. So
the biggest problem is that we're not informed how or why not wearing a mask could harm other people. We're just told that it will harm other people. So last year when I was in grade 7, I was told by a very scared and vulnerable teacher that if we didn't wear our masks, we were going to get her sick, and then that her being sick would kill her father, who had cancer. I've been told that it's my patriotic responsibility to protect my country by wearing a mask. Our curriculum isn't about science and math and language. It's now about the politics of COVID, and it's about masks, and it's not even informed knowledge and informed talking about masks and COVID. It's just wear your mask or you're going to harm people. Wear your mask or you're going to give your friends COVID. We have been shut down. Our whole lives have been a roller coaster for the past 2 years, and no one seems to have a problem with it. And I don't really care, no offense, I don't care what McMaster says, I don't care what SickKids, if they've switched up or not. I care what the kindergartens and the grade ones are crying and screaming about when their faces are covered and they can't talk to their friends. I've watched like 4 and 5-year-olds get screamed at and lose their recesses because they tried to hug their friends. And it's just as bad for the teachers. Like, they're so scared because nobody's properly informed. It's like a catastrophe. Everybody's just scared and they don't know what to do. And there's been no leadership from anybody in the schools or outside of the schools.
Like, the teachers are spending a lot of their lives policing this masking, so it better be incontrovertible that they're working.
Thank you. So I do have a question, but I'm going to save my question because my question is actually for staff regarding some of the things that you said. So I'm going to save my question for when we do have the COVID update during the director's report, and we're bang on 10 minutes. So again, thank you so much for bringing your delegation. As I just mentioned, we are going to be reviewing COVID protocols under the director's report later in the evening. And as I said to Rod, you're more than welcome to continue to watch via our live stream via the HDSB website. By and large, I just do need to remind you, we are guided by the advice given to us by public health in this matter. But I really do appreciate you being able to come to the table and have your voices heard. I really think it's so important to listen to the diverse opinions. You know, as Vice Cheryl Harrison said, we are hearing from both sides of these very passionate and committed people for their cause. And I think it's really important that we have this opportunity to hear these opinions in this constructive way. And you've allowed us to do that through your delegation. So I do really appreciate the time you spent to come and speak to us, the time you spent in researching. So really, again, thank you so much, and have a great rest of your evening. And hopefully you'll hang on later and watch what's going on, and maybe we'll get a little bit deeper into some of the questions that might have arisen from your presentation. So thank you.
Thanks so much for having us. Take care.
Have a great evening. All right, so as I said, I thought, well, it's 7:48. I don't know, do we want to keep going? Do we want to do a couple of presentations or take a break? Keep on going. Okay, so we'll go through the presentations. We do have 2 presentations this evening. First up, we are going to hear from Superintendent Salmini regarding the regional programs of iSTEM and the International Baccalaureate Program. So, Director Ennis, I guess, can you direct us to Superintendent Salmini?
Thank you so much, Chair Shuttleworth, and good evening, trustees. Once again, I know that in the past, trustees have been asking questions around some of our programs that we have in our schools, and Superintendent Salmini has a presentation for us, and so I'm going to turn it over to her.
Thank you. I'm just going to pull up my slides. Good evening, everyone. So this evening, I do have a brief presentation for you about a few of our secondary optional programs, specifically IB, iSTEM, and AP, and I hope that it is helpful. So we'll start with the International Baccalaureate IB, as we call it, and a bit of an overview of that program. It is a comprehensive diploma program that takes place in grade 11 and 12. There are requirements for this program, and students take subjects from each of the 6 areas that you see listed there on the slide. They also are required to complete some core requirements, extended essay, theory of knowledge, and a demonstration of creativity, activity, and service. In Halton, all of our IB schools also offer a program for grade 9 and 10 students called the Accelerated Learning Program, ALP, in preparation for the IP diploma program. And so currently the locations that we have, Burlington, we offer both ALP and IB at Burlington Central High School. In Oakville, it's at White Oak Secondary School, Milton, Craig Kilberger Secondary School, and in Georgetown, Georgetown District High School. So a little bit of information about the application process for the Accelerated Learning Program, which then leads to the IB program in grade 11 and 12. So any interested students submit an application package. That includes student information, previous report card data, and essay responses to specific questions. These applications are typically open in late October and close in early December. All applications are either approved or declined by a school committee based on pre-established criteria. Students are notified in mid-January about the status of their application, and the number of initial offers is based on program and school capacity. And in any given year, that might be different based on overall school capacity at the school. Students with approved applications that do not get an initial offer are listed and may be granted an offer based on a random process after the acceptance of offer. So like a lottery process, but first we wait to hear whether those first offers are accepted or declined by students. So in terms of student interest and admissions over time, we'll start with Georgetown District High School, and you'll see the applications submitted, offers of admission, and offers accepted over the last 2 school years and for our upcoming school year. And there's not much variation from year to year at Georgetown. Burlington Central High School, the same. There's the data for the last 2 school years and our upcoming school year. Craig Kielberger Secondary School, there's the data as well. Again, not a great deal of change from year to year. And then there's White Oak Secondary School. And you will notice that in particular for next year, there seems to have been an increase in the applications submitted and also a bit of a decrease in the offers of admission. And that would be due to the overall accommodation pressures at the school in terms of spaces available for the program. And hopefully once we relieve some of those accommodation pressures with the new high school in Oakville, that won't be a challenge. And we know that we've spoken to families around that. So moving on, a little bit of an overview of iSTEM, which is Innovation, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. And as you all know, this is an innovative regional 4-year program for secondary students with entry in grade 9 that we started over the last few years. Students develop innovative skills related to engineering design, design thinking, entrepreneurial thinking skills, and global competencies. And they learn to be prepared for technological change and disruption, globalization, and shifting demographics. And our locations currently are at Aldershot High School. It's been there for a number of years, as you know. Elsie McGill Secondary School in Milton, starting up in this coming school year. And there are plans for TA Blakelock High School beginning in 2023-24. The application process, it's similar to the application process I described for ALP and IB. Interested students submit an application package, which includes student information as well as responses to questions related to the program, personal learning goals, and an identification of a problem to solve or a big question to explore as part of the students' learning in the iSTEM program. They're typically due in December, which is aligned with the ALP timelines, because some students apply to both programs. Students are randomly selected each year from the applications that met the entrance criteria. Application decisions are communicated to students via email in mid-January. They're due in late January, and available spaces are offered to students on a wait list also as per a random selection process. And here are some numbers in terms of student interest in admissions for both Aldershot and Elsie McGill. There is some variation from year to year in terms of the offers of admission as well as the applications. And I believe that about 120 students per school year is sort of the general number that we're thinking for this program. And the final program I'd like to speak to you about this evening is the Advanced Placement Program, AP. AP is a school-based rather than a regional program. AP exams and courses allow high school students who excel in particular subject areas to have the opportunity to gain university credits while they are still in high school. So to be able to enter into a second year course as opposed to a first year. However, this is an American-based program, so it's really important for students to check the universities they're applying to make sure that they support and accept the AP program and that benefit for students. Any student who pays an examination fee can take the 2 or 3 hour exam, which is written in May of each year. Students don't have to take an AP course in order to write the exam, but typically those that do are better prepared for the exams. And the AP course content, which is the American content, is built into the existing curriculum courses as an enhancement, and students are assessed and evaluated based on the Ontario curriculum, but there's also this additional piece. And that AP curriculum is set by the College Board in the United States. And so, as I said, this program largely depends on student interest, but also the availability of staff in any given building to provide the program. So it is a school-based decision. And currently, schools that offer AP are Abbey Park High School, Iroquois Ridge High School, Oakville Trafalgar High School, and Milton District High School. The application process, students attend a designated AP school. Interested in students select an AP course at course selection time with the support of their guidance department, and students register in the fall to write the exams in May, and the cost is approximately $140 Canadian per exam for students to write those exams. So this is just a brief overview of these programs, but I would like to conclude by saying we have many wonderful, engaging programs across all of our schools in secondary school. And so I've only spoken about these tonight because that was the interest for this evening, but certainly our schools, our secondary schools are full of wonderful, engaging programming to meet the learning needs of all of our diverse learners. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. We can open the floor to questions, and we have a list building. So right now we have Trustee Grevence followed by Trustee Rocha.
Thank you so much for this presentation. Very valuable information. I don't think we've had a presentation like this in at least a while. So it's great to see how our sort of extended programs are being taken up across the region. My question is around AP, and I just noticed that there's 3 schools in Oakville and 1 in Milton that offer AP. And I know in Burlington, the Catholic Board has an AP program at Assumption. And I was just wondering if we're looking at all at whether a program could happen in one of our schools in Burlington, or I also noticed not in Halton Hills either. Just from an equity point of view and equity of access.
Thank you for the question, and through the chair to Trustee Grevence. Yes, I noticed that too, that our Oakville schools are offering and some other areas are not offering. Having said that, it is different than a regional program because it is school-based and they have to have staff that are able to and willing to provide the program. So certainly we talk to our schools to ask about what they're offering and what they might be considering, but it isn't a program where we make the decision as a department or as a board to host. It really is a school-based.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Trustee Rocha.
I may have several questions, so I may have to put myself back on the speakers list. So first question is looking at the different tables of offers of admission versus offers accepted. Sometimes there's a huge disparity between how many applications were submitted, how many offers were made, and how many were accepted. Do you know why there would be such a disparity between students being offered a position and then not accepting their offer?
Yeah, through the chair to Trustee Rocha, often students will apply to multiple multiple programs and then are deciding which one they want to go to. So that could be a reason. Often students will apply and then think about, once they have the offer, because they want to know they have the option. And then they decide in the end that they may not want to. And then that's why we have the wait lists, because often, there are students that will take those places if the initial offers are not accepted.
Okay, so just to follow up on that, so how far out are we going to continue offering spots to students who have been waitlisted?
So I would, once we get into our staffing processes, right, which is happening right now, the schools communicate with anybody who has applied whether or not there are any more opportunities. So they're in the process of doing that now, right? So if they don't have any more spaces, they will communicate with their waitlisted students so that they know whether or not there's still an opportunity.
I'll go back on the wait list.
All right, thank you. Trustee Vidilankara.
Hi, thank you. Through the chair. So actually, this was a topic that was brought up at one of our recent student Senate meetings. We had some students express concern over how IB, schools select students for the IB program. So I was hoping that Superintendent Salmini could confirm whether it's like a random draw. Does it depend on boundary? I think that students assume that it's a merit-based program that you sort of get into, and by program I mean the ALP for grade 9. And I think students were surprised to hear that it was something that is more random than merit-based.
Through the chair to Trustee Vidilankara. Yes, it is merit-based in terms of all of the applications are reviewed and then they're either accepted or denied based on the criteria. But beyond that, the randomized place is that if they have more accepted applications than spaces, that's when the wait list occurs and then it's randomized. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sort of. So and so is it also boundary based? So if you're closer to the school, are you more likely to be accepted to the program, or is it just purely random?
So that's an interesting question. We were asked that question in our Oakville community in particular. I guess the answer is both, because the students that would feed into White Oaks, for example, would be part of the overall capacity of that school anyway. So if they are not accepted, it doesn't open up more spaces for that program because they still need to be counted in the overall capacity of the school. So this year with the data as it shows with all of the applications, there was some consideration in terms of what's the overall capacity. Are these students going to be sitting in our classes anyway? And so therefore, it doesn't open up extra spaces because of the overall capacity, if that makes sense. And I know that certainly Superintendent Ito has had many conversations both with families and with the staff at school around that this year. And I'm not sure if he has anything more that he might like to add in response to that question. Maybe not.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. Just I've to be honest, I think Superintendent Salmini, you did a good job outlining the challenge. We have major accommodation pressure issue, as Trustee Amos would well know at White Oaks, and so exactly as Superintendent Salmini has described, that is the challenge, and that plays into how many students we can take from beyond those feeder schools.
Yeah, I really appreciate those answers, because I understand that. I know, like, for example, IB at White Oaks, that's an oversubscribed program and we've got lots of applicants. But I do feel for the students that don't get the chance to participate in that program because, let's say, they don't live as close to the school, or, their name wasn't drawn. And I know a lot of our senators were expressing sort of like concerns around how equitable that is. And so I wonder if, this is a bit of a follow-up, sorry, but I wonder if, students could tap into other IB schools. I know like CK doesn't have, I mean, it has a brand new program, so I don't think the numbers are very, very high. I wonder if exceptions could be made to those students who still do want to, pursue a different kind of education. Because the fact that we have IB schools in every region would theoretically mean that all students have kind of equal access to it, but that's obviously not the case.
Yeah, maybe just to jump in there, and then I'll turn it over to Superintendent Salmini, specifically as it applies to White Oaks. And I've certainly had lots of conversations with disappointed students and families for sure. As Superintendent Salmini said, it is a rolling process. So offers go out, students accept, some decline, as was mentioned. And so further offers are put out, and that process continues on. While grade 9 is where many of our students like to enter, the reality is that they can continue to apply. I mean, IB doesn't officially start until grade 11, and so they do continue to accept and continue to take in applications in those following years. But in terms of the other locations, we've done some problem solving with families, and that's certainly like Georgetown would be. I know it's quite a distance, but they tend to have quite a few spots there, and those offers have also been put out to parents as in order to explore other areas that may have more capacity. So, sorry, over to you, Superintendent Salmini.
Thank you. No, I invited you in. I appreciate the support. Yes, and the only challenge that could arise for families is transportation if they're going to another school. But of the schools, I think that might have room, as Superintendent Etaf has said, Georgetown would be, I think, the only one, because I do think CK is at capacity as well.
I really appreciate those answers. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we have Trustee Reynolds, then Trustee Oliver, and then back to Trustee Rocha.
Okay. Thank you. Madam Chair, my question is regarding the Advanced Placement Program. Thank you for this report. I find this fascinating. These are stellar programs, and I love that we can talk about them, because I think we should be promoting them and marketing them, and they are great opportunities for students. I'd just like to touch on the point that actually Trustee Grabentz had just raised regarding that there was no AP classes in Burlington schools. And I noted that sometimes students would be offered programs in other schools. So my question is, since this is a school-based decision, what happened to a Burlington student who'd want to take an AP class? Were they essentially offered a seat or a program through another school? Because I know that some of our high schools in Burlington offered quite a number of AP classes. So I was just wondering what sort of options were offered to those students.
So through the chair to Trustee Reynolds, the students, in terms of out of bounds, if there was applications for out of bounds entry into a school that is offering the program, would be considered on a case-by-case basis. So that is an opportunity for people to try if there's an interest. The school-based decision piece is that teachers need to agree to do that extra piece, right? Because it's different than just the regular program because of that American component to it. So in order for school to be able to offer it, they need to have teachers that are wanting to and willing to support the program and do that additional piece in the course. And that's why I'm saying it is a school-based, and it changes from year to year depending on the staff that you have, depending on the interest that your students have shown, all of those things. So it isn't a static piece. And so if we've had schools that were offering things in the past, it may be that they no longer have the staff in place to be able to offer those classes, those AP classes.
All right, thank you very much. Trustee Oliver.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I have some follow-up questions regarding the IB program. So something that, thanks for clarifying this point, and that is that IB doesn't start, in fact, until grade 11. So I've had a lot of questions from families in my community, disappointments that the students were not accepted or placed on a wait list and haven't heard yet. So hearing that the program doesn't actually start to grade 11 gives a little bit of hope, because these students do not, in fact, need to go to the IB offering school. They can continue in their home school and keep applying. And what I'm seeing from the data and what I've heard from private conversations with you is that we did see the numbers in your report. The numbers for White Oaks this year was very high, significantly higher than previous years. So there is an increase in interest. And unfortunately, White Oaks is over capacity in terms of enrollment. So there's some hope that for the students who wanted to go into this September, hopefully White Oaks capacity will resolve itself over the next couple of years, and those spots might in fact become available. Does that make sense? Is that correct?
Yeah.
This?
Yes, that's correct. And then they could apply for the actual IB program, which starts in 11 and 12.
Right.
It's
Okay.
not typically the way it happens, but it is a possibility for those students.
Right. Okay. So there's that. Yeah. And then do we have any data on attrition between students who enter in grade 9 and then change their mind by the time, they come into grade 11? Is there any info on that?
So I didn't collect data on that, and I'd have to go take it back and see if I could find that. I didn't look at that. My, without the data, my guess, I guess, would be most students that start the program do complete the program from, but I don't have the numbers to support that this evening.
Yeah, no, that's just something that occurred to me now, and I appreciate you wouldn't have that at your fingertips. Thank you.
Trustee Rocha, back to you.
Thank you. Through the chair, it's a two-part question. These programs, so iSTEM, AP, I want to get all the acronyms right, ALP. From my understanding is they are open to students outside of Halton, correct?
Yes, through the chair to Trustee Rocha, they are, yes.
So do we know, do you have a rough idea how many students from outside of Halton made it into these programs?
Again, I don't have that data here this evening, but I would say we for the large majority, service our students first to a greater number of our students, definitely. I don't have the breakdown. Each school would have it in terms of how many they accept. And I think in any given year that would vary too based on the number of applications. And I see Superintendent Etoff has popped in because I think he has discussed this at White Oak. So I invite you to help with the response to this question.
Yeah, I can't speak to any other any of the other IB locations, but in terms of WAS, I was just pulling up my information here, and I believe it was, I'm not aware of any that are coming from outside of, I think we've done a good job of that in terms of cutting that off over the years. I do see that there are 12 external candidates, but that means moving from like a private school or something like that is still in the Oakville area. But to my knowledge, I don't believe we accepted any from outside of the Oakville boundary.
Okay, thank you for that. And then, so that brings me to the second part of my question was, because these programs are offered, and I'll speak to iSTEM because I have the schools in my brain. We've got one school in Burlington. We now have one school in Milton. And because iSTEM is a program that's offered to all of the students in Halton, what are we doing to possibly address the start time of those schools so that students from all over Halton can make their way to the school at a reasonable time. Because we don't provide transportation for these optional programs. Students and families will have to find their own way, pay their own way to get to the schools. And I'm just thinking, for example, someone in Halton Hills who's at an iSTEM program in Aldershot, or a student in Oakville traveling to Milton. What do we look at school start times at all in general to accommodate these programs that are taking students from all across Halton?
So through the transportation, because there aren't just those programs at their school, right? So our transportation and bell times are tied to what's happening for the entire school population, not just for these programs. So that would be a challenge in terms of changing bell times because as you all know, and we've talked about before, those are linked to transportation across Halton District, including our coterminous board, right? So that's what determines bell times rather than optional programs. Although I do appreciate your comments in terms of the challenges that families face in getting their kids to the schools for these programs.
And I guess my concern is if we know we're going to offer a program at a school, and let's look at Elsie McGill, brand new school, we're going to offer this program that's offered to all of Halton. Why would, when HSTS comes up with their school bus routes, do we not talk to them about programs and perhaps trying to delay the start time of a school so that all children can arrive at a reasonable time? I'm just thinking, like, what's the communication between a new school being built and the programs that will be offered so that we can at least consider teenage brains wanting to sleep in a little longer and the long commute to the schools.
So I see that Superintendent Naidoo has jumped in, and I'm sure she can speak to you more about that piece.
Thank you, and for the chair to Trustee Rocha. When we look at the bell times, we are looking from an efficiency perspective. So the analysis is being conducted, currently for next year, for example. We do know, however, and we do speak with all the departments in terms of programming, changes in program locations, whether they're regional or local, optional or mandatory. A lot of optional programs do not have transportation. Some programs have transportation by means of taxis, for example. So it depends, or short buses or long buses. So it is a collaboration between all of our departments, program services, student services, and HSTS. However, the bell time itself is not dictated by program. It's dictated by efficiencies, because the elementary schools that are feeding into a secondary school, they're in the same location and between two member boards. So the shortest route, in order to allow the same bus driver to drive 3 different routes, runs within one morning and one afternoon, is the way that we are determining bell times. Typically, secondary schools have been earlier, with the elementary schools being picked up later. So a newer elementary school coming on, so a new elementary school will likely have a later start time and be accommodated because the routes are already in place in that region. Thank you. Trustee Rocha, is that the end of your questions?
It does, but I think as a board, we can probably look at maybe having more, add more thought into those students who are traveling quite a distance to, instead of starting high school at 8 in the morning, maybe starting at 8:30 or 9 versus a school that doesn't offer any optional programs. Perhaps that school can start a little earlier. So I think maybe this warrants more of a discussion, which is not part of Superintendent Salmini's report. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from trustees? All right, so Superintendent Salmini, I do have one question, and it's kind of sort of stemming off of one of Trustee Rocha's questions. So when we were talking about applications from outside of the region, so I know that the iSTEM program is now in its 4th year, and every year it's gotten more popular and more and I know that in the beginning there was equal consideration for outside of Halton as there was from inside. I'm just wondering, and I think I've had conversations with people, I think, suggesting that that's correct. So what I'm wondering is, because iSTEM, the newer program, has garnered so much interest, is there discussion? And so I know Superintendent Etaw said that they've looked at that at White Oaks and ensured that the students that are there are from Halton. So I'm just wondering if that consideration has been considered for the iSTEM program as well.
Through the chair to you, the chair. My understanding is that part of the reason for opening more sites is in order to capture those students and the growing interest. But I see that Superintendent Blackwell has joined us, and we all know her level of leadership and involvement for iSTEP. So I would invite her to also respond.
Thank you, Superintendent Salmini, and through the chair to the chair. So just a reminder into the history of iSTEM, and part of it was to come up with an innovative program that actually kept a school open with a low enrollment. And at the time, the will of the board was that we would be looking at not just moving the seats around, I guess the chairs around the deck. It was to add to our current population in our schools. So at the time, we did a lot of marketing, did a lot of promotion, many a days at the GO train station with the rain pouring on us. We had offered to not only private schools, students in private schools, which has been a big success, to our coterminous board. We've drawn from there, and again, we've served our own students. So it was adding to our enrollment in that area of Burlington, and part of the location decision and the partnerships with McMaster, if you'll recall, and Mohawk, working within that area. So as we've, kind of drawn attention to it through some of the private schools that are in that area, we have seen that word has spread and seen some attraction. So we have continued to include those in that application at the Aldershot site. We do not have the same issue in terms of adding people to our Milton site. We know that Milton is very populated, and as you can see from the numbers, so it might be a differentiated approach in terms of moving forward. But that, again, that's the history of what we've been doing at Aldershot.
Right. So if I can just have a follow-up. So I recognize that marketing piece, and I know in the beginning, as you said, and I've had these discussions, maybe even with you, about the idea that it was to bolster engagement and excitement about a school and create this new programming. But I now just consider that I look at those numbers, and in particular for the Milton School, those numbers of students that have been accepted. And I have to pause when I think, if there was a student from outside of Halton, and again, public schools, if they're within the Halton region, I think that is fair game. But if it was from outside of Halton, I don't know. I just don't know that that's serving our community as well as maybe we should. And I just wonder if there is an opportunity to reconsider almost the choicing of how we choose the students.
Thank you. And I think as Superintendent Salmini said, there's probably some data that we need to look at and see if that's actually the case in terms of, it may have evolved this year. I know in the initial, it was a number of students, and we'll see I'm not sure where we are at this point, but good data to collect for sure.
Thank you. Trustee Vigilankar.
Hi, thank you. Through the chair, I just wanted to sort of follow up on my previous question. I'm curious to know whether it's being communicated to students what their options are if they aren't accepted to, whether it's the ISTEM or the IB program, like that they do have an alternate option, possibly, going to Georgetown or another school that has the capacity for it. I just think in speaking to students, they don't seem to know that that's an option. And I'm curious to know sort of when they get that letter saying, sorry, we can't take you into our program, are options given to them? Or is it sort of a matter of, I have to kind of reach out to my superintendent or the principal to ask what my options are?
So through the chair to Trustee Vigilankar, I didn't hear all of it. I don't know if it's my internet or yours, but you were cutting in and out a bit. But what my understanding of the question is what happens for students in terms of communication and options. And my advice to any student would be to connect with their guidance counselor, to connect with the people at the school. I know that at White Oaks, they as Superintendent Etoff has said, they did do some problem solving with students in terms of telling them there may be space at Georgetown. So it certainly happens. But what I would say to any student is that we have guidance counselors, teachers, administrators, all of those folks at the school level that are there to support you and to definitely ask those questions and not to be shy about asking those questions.
Thank you. Yeah, because I hate to think that there's a student that really wants to do a program and they're not able to do it, and then they don't know that maybe there's other ways of joining it later on in the year in grade 11 or joining it at another school. So I just think making it really clear what their options are is super important. So yeah, I appreciate that answer. Thank you.
Trustee Collard, if you lowered your hand? Mm-hmm. Oh, there you are. Okay, Trustee Collard.
Thank you. Through you to the presenters this evening, I'm a little bit concerned that we're asking students to check with their guidance counselors or principals about their options after they received news that they didn't get accepted into a program. I would prefer to think that we would put a process in place that every school would follow so that if a student was being given the news that they were not accepted into a program, someone would sit and talk with them about their options, and the student wouldn't have to seek out that information. I would like to think that we had a process in place so that students would all receive the information without needing to ask for it. That's just some food for thought, and my heartfelt wishes for students to know what all their options are.
Through the chair to Trustee Collard, thank you for that feedback, and I certainly can take that back for consideration and for future planning.
Thank you so much.
All right, there are no further questions. So on behalf of the board, Superintendent Salmini and Superintendent Etoff, I'd like to thank you for your presentation and information. Thank you very much. Have a great evening. Well, we're now on to presentation number 2. So I don't know if can we take maybe a 5-minute break before the next presentation, if that's okay? I know there's been some comfort breaks requested. So if we break for 5 minutes, and we'll come back at 8:35. All right, I see Trustee Reynolds. Anyone else? Oh, there's Trustee Gabins. Director Ennis. Can I just check? Oh, there's Trustee Danielle, Trustee Collard, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We need one more for me. Well, 2. There's Trustee Garrett. We're good? We've got 6? Oh, there we go. Awesome. We are good to go. Thank you, everyone. So 8, 9. Awesome. All right. We are now up to our second presentation. This is with Associate Director Bo, Superintendent Taha, and Research Specialist Dr. I wrote it down and I'm still not going to get it. I'm so sorry, Rosanna. I will speak on the phase 1 of staff and student census.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm going to start us off, and Dr. Bishelia, Rosanna Bishelia, is going to do the bulk of the talking. And while I get started here, I just want to set the stage. I'm hoping that she can project for us. It's our real pleasure to share with you some preliminary early results, I guess I would say, on our staff and student census. Trustees may recall that we implemented both of these censuses last year, finishing up last spring. And there's been lots and lots of work that's happened behind the scenes over the course of last summer and all of the fall to get them to a place where we're now ready to share them publicly. And so we wanted to give trustees a bit of a preview this evening. This is really phase 1 or part 1 of a continuous rollout. You're going to see some identity data today for both staff and students, but we are digging into this data now. We're starting to get some traction, and we'll be rolling out different pieces continually throughout the rest of this school year. I just want to say that the census data is so rich. We've never had this kind of information, this data before. And so it is very exciting as we start to look at who our students are and who our staff are. The work that we will do as we dig into this is really going to inform the work that we do in our operational plan. That ultimately is going to have a big significant impact on both our kids, our students, and the staff who work for the Halton District School Board. So it is very exciting. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Bishelia. She's going to take you through this, and Superintendent Taha is available, myself, Dr. Bishelia, and Superintendent Etoff as well at the end of the presentation if there are questions. So Rosanna, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, David. And I do have a timer next to me. I'm going to do my very best to be as succinct as possible. So as David mentioned, the census was conducted last year, and this is just a very high-level highlight of the various frameworks that guide and inform this work. And it's a reciprocal relationship, of course, because the census data are also meant to support the various strategies and policies that we have in the board. In particular, I would like to emphasize the Ontario's anti-racism data standards. Those data standards, along with the Anti-Racism Act, is what mandates all public sector organizations to gather identity-based data, and in particular, race-based data, in order to examine disparities in outcomes, programs, and etc. So the staff census and the student census were done last academic year. For kindergarten to grade 3, parents and guardians responded on kids' behalf because of the nature of the question and the developmental age of the students. While for students, can you hear me?
I apologize, Rosanna. Is the slide deck advancing? It looks stuck here with me. I'm just wondering if we've got a technical glitch.
I don't know. It's advancing on my end. I'm on participation rates.
Yeah, I just looked at trustees. Are you seeing it?
It's not advancing.
I think if you have a slideshow going, you've picked perhaps the wrong.
There you go.
There you go.
I think you're on the right one now.
You're not showing us in present mode though either. I don't think. I wonder if that's part.
Yeah, it apparently doesn't show in present mode. But what I can do is, unless somebody else wants to present.
This should work, Rosanna. Go ahead.
We'll do it this way. Okay. So kindergarten to grade 3, parents and guardians responded to the questions, while for grade 4 to grade 12 students, it was a self-report completed during a class time. So you can see in terms of participation rate, a total of 64,613 students were invited to complete the census. The highest participation was amongst grade 4 to 8 with 93% participation, grade 9 to 12, 84%, and kindergarten to grade 3 is 59%. I'll mention that is a bit lower, but it is higher relative to other school boards that have engaged in this work. In terms of staff, we had a total of 10,922 staff members that were invited to participate. And this includes occasionals, casual, and staff that were also on medical leaves. And the participation rate for staff is 75%, with approximately 8,176 completed census. So David mentioned that we are working on a phased approach for release. Here is a timeline for what the public and yourself can expect in the next several months. In the purple boxes, we have what is essentially going to be happening this month, the month of March. So we're starting with data on the identities of HDSB students and staff, which I will sample for you this evening. And following that, in about a week and a half or two, we'll also be publishing preliminary analysis on the experiences of students and staff around school climate, sense of belonging, and so forth. The crux of this work, though, really it revolves around disaggregation. So looking at things like programming, special education, academic achievement, opportunities and outcomes across a variety of domains, and looking at those data categorized by identity variables. And it's that disaggregation that really will help us to understand where there are disparities and disproportionalities in experiences, opportunities, and outcomes. And that work will start to be rolled out in the next couple of months, and it will continue on in the fall as well. So the questions that were included on the questionnaire came to us from the Anti-Racism Directorate. They are standardized so that all public sector organizations gather the information in the same manner. So here's a list of the different categories. For this evening, I'll just be focusing on race, gender identity, sexual orientation, religion, spiritual affiliation, and disability. So just a note that for students, gender identity and sexual orientation were gathered for grade 7 and above, consistent with the curriculum. So starting off with race, the question posed to students and staff was which racial groups best describe you? The question is posed in a way that provides respondents with some options, and the options are listed on the screen with the exception of multiracial, and I'll speak to that in a minute. But respondents were also able to select multiple choices and to also write in an option that might not have been included in the question. And that was by design by the ARD so that the question is posed in the most inclusive manner. So this is data for elementary, and having the opportunity to select multiple choices and to also enter additional categories resulted in students choosing over 120 unique combination of racial identities. So for example, South Asian and East Asian would be one identity grouping that students might have chosen. Middle Eastern, Black, and Indigenous would have been another combination. So there was more than 120 combinations identified by students. And so that's wonderful from an equity and diversity and inclusive perspective. In terms of data analysis and reporting, it does introduce some challenges of how to best capture that diversity while still maintaining privacy and confidentiality. So we're still working on how to best categorize all of that diversity. For tonight, for this presentation, it's reflected in the multiracial. And I'll share that in general, public sector organizations would label that as mixed race, which is problematic for a number of reasons. So we are taking an anti-oppressive approach and looking for ways to further disaggregate the mixed racial. So we'll report back on the next data release. So in terms of the single categories, we have 44% of elementary students identifying as white, 23% as South Asian, 10% as Middle Eastern, and then 9% as East Asian. And then you can see, however, that all of the racial groups were selected by students, really speaking to the diversity. So for elementary, we have a racialized population of approximately 56%. We have a similar breakdown for secondary. White and South Asian, again, were sort of the most predominant groupings, followed by East Asian and Middle Eastern. But again, all of the different categories were endorsed. And for secondary, we have a racialized population of 48%. Going on to staff, here as well, we see that, all the groups are endorsed, but with less frequency than we have seen with students. So 82% of our staff are identified as white. And the next largest category would be South Asian, which is in keeping with the student population. However, the racialized population for the staff is 18%, which is considerably lower than the student population. So moving on to what disaggregation would look like. So this is an example of one disaggregation that we've engaged in with human resources. This is staff tenure, or the length of employment by our staff as reported on the student census, categorized by race. And one can see that for staff who have been employed with the board for less than 6 years, there's a higher percentage of diversity across the racial categories. So as an example, we have 4.6% of staff who identify as Black who have been employed with us for less than 6 years. But as the tenure increases, the diversity also decreases. So as a relative category, the Black goes down to 0.8%. The reverse pattern is observed for the white racial category, where for staff who have been employed with us for more than 10 years, that percentage is 93%, whereas it decreases for staff who have been with us for less than 6 years. So we're taking this as early evidence and preliminary evidence as a proxy for efficacy of diverse efforts meant to diversify the workforce. And this is the power. I just really wanted to include this slide with Superintendent Taha's suggestion. It's a wonderful example of how disaggregating the data by identity categories can tell us a story of what our practices, the impact of our practices have been over the long term. So going back to identity profiles, this is for sexual orientation, elementary students, and we can see here that 85% identified as heterosexual or straight, and 15% identified as a term coined as sexual diversity, which is meant to include lesbian, gay, bisexual, two-spirit, queer, questioning, asexual, pansexual, and or additional sexual orientations that students would have entered in an open text box. Likewise, for staff, the predominant sexual orientation is heterosexual and straight, and sexual diverse is 7%. So it is about half of what the student population identified. Gender identity, it was the next, so I now mentioned that there were no differences between the secondary and the elementary in the sexual orientation, and that is why I just presented one for brevity, but it will be available on the public website as its own graph. Gender identity, we have secondary here and similar pattern of findings for elementary, majority 48% boy or man, 47% girl, woman, and we have about 5% identifying as gender diverse. For staff, overwhelming 81%, not a surprise, I think for many of us, identify as female, 18% as male, and about 1% as gender diverse. The next identity question revolved around religion and spiritual affiliations. And again, respondents could choose amongst a list of spiritual and religious affiliations in addition to entering their own category. So for elementary, Muslim, Christian, and no religious or spiritual affiliations were the top three selected choices with 27, 24, and 22% respectively. But you can see that all the colors are represented, which again speaks to the diversity in our student population. Similar, but not exactly the same for secondary. We have Christian as 25%, but no religious or spiritual affiliation was the next highest percentage, followed by Muslim and atheist. But again, we see all the colors represented. And then we have staff, where 46% identified as a Christian, and that is the single most frequent category. And then the next ones is no religion or spiritual affiliation, followed by spiritual but not religious, followed by multiple religions, and then an additional categories. You can see there's some variation with staff as well. The next two slides, and these will be the last two slides on the identity, pertains to disability. And the question was, do you consider yourself to be a person with a disability? And this is purely a self-identification. It's not based on a diagnosis. And 84% of our students, and this is similar to secondary and elementary, responded with a no, some unsure, about 8%, and 8% of yes. Among the students who did indicate that they consider themselves to be a person with a disability, 50% identified as having more than one disability. Learning disabilities, mental health, and autism spectrum disorder were the highest single disability categories identified by students. But I also mentioned that all disabilities were endorsed by the students, albeit with varying degrees of frequency, including pain, mobility, and addictions. Similar with staff, 85% reported no to perceiving themselves as having a disability, 9% unsure, and 6% yes. For staff as well, mental health ranked the highest, followed by learning disability and then physical disability. But as well for staff, all disability types were endorsed, including pain, mobility, and addiction. So this ends the identity part of the presentation. I just wanted to leave you with some thoughts in terms of the next steps. We will continue to analyze the data in order to examine and identify disparities and disproportionalities in opportunities and outcomes, student experiences, and in terms of staff census, really digging deeper into the representation across union groups, leadership roles, as well as understanding disparities in staff experiences. So are particular groups less likely or more likely to face specific barriers? The next step is also to prepare action plans, because this is what the data is meant for, to support our multi-year plan, to enhance the type of services that are provided by schools and service departments, and also for us to support principals in implementing PPM 165, the teaching and hiring practices, really by centering human rights and diversity as credentials. And we'll continue with stakeholder engagement. So this data is really meant to be a benefit to communities, and in many ways, this is their data. It's meant to really support all communities and ensure that we're meeting the needs of all the different students that represent our wonderful student and staff community. And that's it for me. I don't know how I did for time, but I welcome any questions.
You did great. Are there any questions from the trustees? And wonderful. Trustee Grabet.
Thank you so much. This presentation actually blew my mind a bit. And there are just so many interesting surprises and gaps that are identified here. One thing, though, I have a question. We have in the presentation the sexual orientation of students for elementary and for staff, but I don't see anything for secondary. And I was just wondering if that's just going to come later, or like why it was not included. And then I just have a comment, and that is, this is important information for our community to have, because there's lots of conversations that trustees have with people, parents, and school councils, and all sorts of things about respecting the diversity of our population. People have a really strong sense still that, especially at the elementary level where you have those sorts of celebrations, that we are predominantly a Christian, predominantly Christian. And boy, that's not the case. It's only a quarter of our student population. And so it's really to the point where, we kind of should be accommodating in the same vein the Christian side of things as the Muslim side of things. They're very closely in numbers. It's fascinating. And it would be also interesting looking at the Christian calendar that we use by default. Is it really, and I know that's through the ministry, but a note to the ministry, are we really serving the families appropriately? And is there another way to look at the calendar? But anyways, so my question, go right ahead, Doctor, go right ahead.
Thank you very much for the question. So wherever a slide was omitted for elementary or secondary is because, just for brevity purposes, the data were similar. But publicly, they will be included on the public website and shared in the same manner.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any more questions from the trustees? Vice Cheryl Harrison.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. My question is whether, when all of the phases are released, whether there will also be, or whether we have any contextualizing information or studies. So for example, if we identify that the students are much more diverse in a number of ways than staff, for example, what's the impact of that? Will we be deriving that input from this survey, or alternatively from external studies that have been done, just to kind of put the understand the impact of what we're seeing in the results?
I can answer that, David. So through Madam Chair, this is where community input and engagement, needs to inform our work, right? Because it's really through conversations with, for example, our Indigenous leaders, our faith councils, and et cetera, that we can really understand what are the disparities that we really need to pay attention to. What are those that, are sort of an artifact of patterns in society in general? And what are the ones that are of most importance to the community that we need to prioritize today? So I would suggest that, we don't have all those answers, and we need to really seek out those authentic and, deep conversations with our community stakeholders to fully understand even the questions that we need to ask. We have a baseline of questions, but are there questions, and I'm sure there are, that we're missing that communities are really wanting for us to dig deeper into?
I see Superintendent Taha has raised his hand. Go ahead.
Thank you, Director Ennis. Through you, Chair Shuttleworth, to Trustee L. Harrison. First of all, thank you so much, Dr. Bishagia, for your presentation. I also want to acknowledge the work of General Manager Alison Vera-Ippolito in this initiative and its rollout and its the collection of the data and the packaging of the data. So thank you for all your work. In terms of your question, Trustee L. Harrison, we do have a monumental challenge in terms of ensuring that our students can see themselves in our workforce, that there are role models for our students, that, for instance, Black boys see Black male models in our workforce. So that is a monumental challenge that we face as a sector, as a society. And I say this in terms of the supply and demand. While we aspire to increase representation in our workforce and align it with society and our student body, we face structural realities in terms of who is entering the profession, who is graduating from our faculties of ed, and so on and so forth. So to that end, we continue to engage our community partners. I've been to several meetings with our parent council leaders, and we have some creative ideas on how we can promote the profession at the grassroots level. Not only the teaching profession, but being in public service. And we have started that sort of initiative last year, that we engage our students in starting to think about entering public sector, public education. Also the idea that as a sector, we're all competing for the same talent pool. Let's put it that way. All 72 school boards in Ontario are trying to brand themselves as the employer of choice, and to gain as many diverse perspectives and increased representation as possible. So that's the challenge we all face as a society and a sector. So in Halton, we have to make ourselves the employer of choice. We have to recruit in every creative way, one body at a time, one individual at a time, and it's going to take time to turn over the workforce, as you saw. Even though this is the inaugural workforce census in terms of its formal launch, you can see that the efforts of this board for the last 5 years are beginning, or at least to that I would suggest, to pay some dividends, but we have a long way to go. We will continue working with our equity department, Dr. Julia Moe and others, on really speaking of competencies, human rights competencies, equity competencies. So in other words, if I don't belong to a particular identity, I bring a competency that can speak to other identities through a lived experience or through other means. So we have to be creative in how we have our students see themselves in the workforce, even if it's not from a visible perspective. It's through how we lead, how we teach, how we provide service. So it's exciting work, but it's challenging work.
Thank you. Oh, Trustee Vigilankara.
Thank you so much. Through the speaker, thank you so much for this presentation. I know a lot of students were really curious to know what the student census data found. I know that was like a hot topic last year, and it's great to see this project kind of like the results of it. My question is really closely related to what Vice Cheryl Harrison just brought up. So it's pertaining to kind of the staff diversity. I can't say I'm shocked by, I guess, the lack of diversity among staff. I guess I'm just asking on behalf of students, what exactly is the response by the HDSB? I guess if you could just share that in a more clear, student-friendly way. What are we doing? So I see on the slides that I think principals are reviewing like PPM 165 and like hiring practices. And I do understand and appreciate that this issue is much deeper than just hiring practices, right? It's about kind of the systemic like roots of why certain individuals don't become teachers or aren't able to become teachers or face challenges in even attending like teachers college. But I still think in the meantime, while we wait for those systemic issues to be solved, we still need to do something. And I'm just curious to know what exactly we are doing. If you could just share that in a way that's clear to students. Thank you.
I think Superintendent Taha is in the back.
Sure. Through you, Chair Shuttleworth, to Trustee Vijay Langara. Thank you so much for that question. And I really appreciate your question. You want the straight goods. What is it that you're doing to increase staff representation? So I can tell you three things. And when I say it's hard work, I mean it, but that's not to say we're giving up. I say it in the sense that it's going to take time to turn over the workforce at the same rate of speed that the student body is turning over in terms of representation. So three things we're doing. Number one, for the first time, this board in at least during my tenure, our employment equity policy is very clear that this board will give first consideration to individuals who identify as members of a historically underrepresented group, and where the skills, abilities, and experiences are relatively equal, those individuals who self-identify will be considered first to join our workforce. So that's important. That's a public commitment, affirmation that while we say increasing representation is important, we will do it operationally. Number two, it's how we recruit and how we advertise. So we've been, again, a new phenomenon, relatively speaking, that we're advertising in non-traditional recruitment boards. So the Black Educators Network, newspapers that serve the underrepresented communities, the Black diaspora in Toronto, the Muslim HR boards. I forgot the exact recruitment board, but we're advertising in non-traditional recruitment avenues. And thirdly, we're working with our principals and vice principals. Our principals and vice principals are the individuals that hire most of our staff. So if you think about it, there are 100 schools with 100 principals who hire 99% of our staff. So we're working with our principals on how is it that you can turn, and it's an art. If Sari Taha says to a principal, I have a lived immigrant experience. I have 30 years of living in Canada as an immigrant, and I present that as a competency. So it is the principal who has then to connect, and me, the applicant, that lived experience to the duties and responsibilities of the job. How can I translate that lived experience into a competency? It's going to take time to sort of turn that framework into an art and operationalize it. And the more we do it, the more it becomes second nature. So those are the three basic things I can tell you. We're giving first consideration to individuals who self-identify. We're engaging in outreach programs more intentionally and more, it's part of our process. This is what we do. And you can see that in our most recent ads. And also working with our hiring managers or principals that if someone says, I speak multiple languages, that is an asset that translates into competency and a responsibility in the workplace. So those are some of the things that we're doing.
I really appreciate those detailed and very clear answers, especially because I think kind of when we look at the outside world, sometimes people are hired, and again, I don't mean to make an assumption, but there is an old boys network, and I don't think that's the case in Halton maybe, but certainly there's bias involved in hiring, and people tend to hire people that are like them or that they know and that they're friends with. And it's this sort of network of, let's just hire a bunch of that's just, white people in these positions. And so I do appreciate that, because like over the course of, I guess, the time that I've been trustee, and just even before that, I've been on like every panel for equity and these focus groups. And the main thing that a lot of students talk about is my teachers don't look like me. And so I do appreciate that that's something that we're working on and working towards. So yeah, thank you for that answer.
Thank you. Are there any more questions for trustees? Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Bisheglia and Superintendent Taha, for your passionate and informing presentation this evening. I know we all learned a lot and appreciate your input. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Have a good night.
Okay, we are now up to items 3.0 and 4.0, the consent agenda items for approval and information, which include the school board minutes from February 16th, as well as the order paper. Are there any so Trustee Garrett, would you like to move a motion to deal with the consent agenda?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
And Trustee Danielle, would you like to second it?
Thank you. Yes, I would.
All right, I'm going to put the motion on the floor. So be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the consent agenda action and information items and receive the information items for March 2nd, 2022. Are there any items that need to be pulled for discussion? Great. So we are using unanimous consent for this again. So are there any objections to approving the consent agenda? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. So we are now up to item 5.0, ratification action items for this evening, starting with business transacted in private session. Vice Chair L. Harrison, do we have any business from private session that requires approval?
Yes, we do. There are 2 items. And I'll read the first one. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board authorize the renewal of the banking services agreement with the Royal Bank of Canada for a new 5-year term from September 1, 2022 to August 31, 2027, and I so move.
Great. Are there any further questions surrounding this? And do we need a seconder? Yes, Trustee Collard, will you second that motion?
Yep.
Is there any debate? Seeing none, if you can pop over to your voting sheets, please, and cast your votes on this motion, please. Missing one. There.
Trustee Oliver.
Trustee Oliver. Yes, so that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Vice Chair Harrison, there was a second item?
Yes, that's correct. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the resolution from the Halton District School Board meeting in private session March 2nd, 2022, respecting property matters, report 22034, and I so move.
Thank you. And Trustee Garrett, would you like to second that motion?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
Right. Is there any debate? Seeing none, if we can pop on over and cast our votes again, please. And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, we are now up to item 5.2, items for action tonight, March 2nd, and we have 3. First off, we have 5.2.1, Safe and Accepting Schools Policy Report number 22023. Superintendent Podreberic, would you like to speak to this at all?
I think Superintendent Podreberic, oh, there he is.
That wasn't the mute button at all. I'm sorry. Sorry for that. Yes, through the chair to trustees, this policy includes, it's been to the board, to trustees 3 times now. Just a quick reminder that this includes our new PPM on anti-sex trafficking, and we've made some small additions to the policy wording that includes more around including ensuring student safety, better student safety, and monitoring and supporting student safety through training. But there's small amendments to this policy. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, great. So I'm going to read the motion. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the Safe and Accepting Schools policy as appended to report 22023. Trustee Rocha, would you like to move this motion?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
And Trustee Amos, would you like to second that?
Yes, I would. Thank you very much.
Okay, are there any debate or questions surrounding this motion, please? All right, seeing none, if we can pop on over and cast our votes, please. And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We are now up to item 5.2.2. Student Trustee Policy and Governance for Procedure, report number 22031. Director Ennis, would you like to speak to this at all?
Sure. Thank you so much, Chair Shuttleworth. Good evening, trustees. In December, trustees asked that a review be taken of the policy and procedures, governance procedures regarding student trustees. We engaged legal representation through Julian Paterna, and a number of recommendations were made both to the policy and to the procedure, which are before you in this report. Happy to take any questions if there are any.
Great, so I'll put the motion on the floor. Be it resolved, the Halton District School Board approve the student trustee policy and the student trustee governance procedure as appended to report 22013. Trustee Reynolds, would you like to move that motion?
Yes, thank you.
And Trustee Oliver, would you like to second that?
Yes, I second it.
Great, and I see that Trustee Collard has her hand up.
Thank you. Yes, I was hoping we could hear Trustee Vidyalankara's views on the changes to the document and whether or not Student Senate still supports the documents that are in front of us.
Yes, thank you so much. And Trustee Bao is here as well. So please, Trustee Bao, add on. We have shown both the policy and the AP to our Student Senate. I know that it's been sent, or it was sent for like legal review, and we've looked at that as well. Student Senate is in support. We are really pleased with the fact that the change to the tiebreaker vote was made. That was a huge part of the policy that I think a lot of students had questions on. So just to briefly summarize, we no longer have a tiebreaker where the director sort of picks a name out of a hat and randomly draws the winner for the election. Instead, we're going to have a democratic process, so a runoff election. And we really appreciate trustee support on this, and we appreciate senior staff respecting those wishes as well. So yeah, the Student Senate does support this motion, and as do me, myself, and Trustee Bao. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be able to support this motion.
Great. Are there any further questions or comments from the floor? All right, seeing none, if we could cast our votes, please. And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We are now up to item 5.2.3, appointment of an external auditor for the 2021-2022 audit, report number 22033. Trustee Collard, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you. Yes, the audit committee met last week and has reviewed this and approved it to come forward to the Board of Trustees. If anyone has any questions specifically regarding the actions involved, I would like to defer to Superintendent Naidoo to answer those questions.
Great. Well, how about I'll read the motion, put it on the floor, and if people have questions, they can ask following. So, be it resolved, the Halton District School Board authorize the appointment of the external audit firm Deloitte LPP to perform the annual fiscal statements audit and the specific procedures report for the 2021-2022 fiscal year at a cost not to exceed $78,960 plus HST. Trustee Collard, would you like to move this motion?
Thank you very much. Yes.
And Trustee Gray, would you like to second that?
Yes, I would.
Great. Are there any questions? Great. Seeing none, if we can pop on over and cast our votes one more time, please. Oh, there we go. There we go. And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, we are now up to item 6.0, communication to the board. And first off, we have item 6.1, our student trustee report. Trustee Bao and Trustee Vigilankara, do you have a report for us this evening?
Yes, we do.
Great. Would you like to proceed?
Thank you. Okay, so good evening, everyone, and happy March. Brief Senate update. We are currently in the process of figuring out how we want to recruit non-senators onto our Student Senate subcommittees. And as we know, the student trustee elections for the school year 2022 to 2023 were held on February 24th. There were 15 candidates from across the region. The campaign period began on February 7th, and it ended at 7:59 a.m. on February 24th on the election day. All grade 7 to 12 students were invited to view the candidates' recorded speeches on the HSP YouTube website between February 22nd and February 24th prior to casting their vote. All grade 7 to 12 students received an email notifying them about the elections along with the link to cast their electronic vote. The voting period was open from 8 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. on February 24th, allowing students a full day to cast their votes. In total, over 2,000 students from across the HSB voted in this year's student trustee elections. The results of the election were announced by Director Ennis during a Google Meet held at 6 p.m. that same evening. All candidates, trustees, student trustee mentors were invited to this meeting. And I'll pass it on to Trustee Vigilankara.
Thank you so much, Trustee Bao. So as with every election, we took away a lot of good learning. After sharing the results of the election, we asked our candidates to fill out an anonymous form so that we could review their reflections and feedback in order to improve our elections going forward. We had done the same thing last year, and it definitely paid off. So we look forward to reading candidate responses and having ongoing conversations about improving our elections process. And before we announce the winners, we just want to take a moment to give a massive and heartfelt thank you to everyone who made these elections possible. The elections process is challenging for candidates, and it is super labor intensive for our staff who work behind the scenes. So thank you first and foremost to our two staff advisors, VP Louisa Botello and VP Ryan Henderson, for helping us run these elections, for communicating with students and staff, and doing a large part of the election management. Thank you also to Superintendent Truffin and the IT department, namely Derek Borganza, Greg Capern, and Kevin Raposo, and everyone on their team for all the support. They ensured that our online elections process can run smoothly, that speeches are uploaded, and that the voting site is live, among many other online tech stuff that we don't fully understand. And this process really is not possible without them. Thank you as well to the Communications Department, Manager of Communications Marnie Denton, Senior Officer Heather Francie, and Senior Officer Jason Misner for their support communicating these elections with the wider community. And last but not least, thank you to Susan Thrasher in the Director's Office for being the first point of contact for many of our candidates, for supporting them and helping us run an organized election. Now, the moment we are all waiting for. We are delighted to announce the student trustees elected to serve during the 2022-2023 school year. Congratulations to Cindy Wang from Oakville-Trafalgar High School and Ethan Ruggiero from Dr. Frank J. Hayden on being elected. They will begin their term on August 1st, 2022, and Casey and I look forward to having them shadow us and supporting their transition. They're actually two of our senators this year, so we've had the pleasure of getting to know them already, and I do want to acknowledge that they have both joined us in our meeting tonight. I don't know if they have their cameras on or if they can maybe wave, but it's a pleasure to have them join us and wave hi. So that concludes our report. Thank you so much. We're happy to take questions.
Great, thank you so much. And I already see there is one question so far. Trustee Oliver.
Not a question, but to formalize the results of the student trustee election, I'd like to bring forward a motion, and that is, be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the appointment of Ethan Ruggiero and Cindy Wang as the student trustees for the Halton District School Board 2022-23 term. And I so move.
Thank you. And Trustee Reynolds, would you like to second that motion?
Yes, I'd be honored. Thank you.
Awesome. Are there any questions? Okay, great. So if we can go to our voting sheets and cast our votes on the motion, please. Great, and that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. So can I ask, are Ethan and Cindy here? Do they want to pop on? And because you're not speaking, we can't see you. So maybe the two of you might want to pop on and just say a quick hello so the trustees can all meet you. Oh, go for it, Ethan. Hey, there you are.
Greetings, trustees and Chair Shuttleworth. My name is Ethan Ruggiero, and I'm super excited to be working with all of you and getting to know all the trustees and all the amazing work that everyone does at the board. And I really look forward to kind of making Halton a greater place for all students and of all races. So I'm super excited for my term next year, and it was an honor to be working with all of you, and especially Trustee Vigilankara and Trustee Bao. So thank you.
Great, and thank you, Ethan. And I know you have an added congratulations as being the first student trustee from Frank J. Hayden. So congratulations. Cindy, are you here as well?
Yes, I am. Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties today, so I can't.
I think we all are. I think it's broadly felt.
Yeah, but I just want to also thank everyone for this opportunity, and I look forward to working with everyone next year as well. I watched the entire board meeting so far from the live stream, and it's like so exciting. I'm really excited to be being able to be part of this process next year. And again, everything that you guys do is so amazing. It's incredible, and I've seen like the impact that you guys have had on students, and so I really look forward to joining in on this process next year. So thank you so much.
That's great. Thank you so much, Cindy and Ethan. And I know we all look forward to getting to know you and work with you in the upcoming months and into next school year. And I know you have some great mentors in both Casey and Vandy. So enjoy your onboarding as you go on, and always feel free to reach out to any of the trustees, but in particular your two trustee mentors, which are Trustee Reynolds and Trustee Oliver. But thank you so much. Congratulations to you both. I'm sure it was a lot of hard work, and I hope you were able to have a little bit of a celebration party once it was all done. So congratulations. All right, does anybody else have any questions for our student trustees? Well, thank you so much again. That was quite a great presentation because we got to meet our two new student trustees for next year. So it's always that little bit extra excitement. So thank you so much again for your report tonight. Okay, now we are up to 6.2, items for action for our next board meeting, which is March 23rd, 2022. So as per our bylaws, many items come to the board for decision, which need to come to the board table more than one time. The first time for information and the second time for consideration for approval. This gives both the board and the public time to consider these items. Tonight we have two items that meet that criteria. The first is the short list of names for the new Milton Southwest number 11 public school, report number 22030. Manager Denton.
Good evening. I'm here. Good evening, trustees. Through you, Chair Shuttleworth, to all trustees. In your package tonight is the board report for the with the short list of names for Milton Southwest number 11, our next elementary school that we are going to be opening in the fall of this year. As you know, we follow an administrative procedure for naming and renaming schools. And part of that process is to collect names from the community. We did that between January 3rd and February 4th. Although it was during one of the provincial school closures, we did have an encouraging number of names. A little over 1,000 names were submitted. About 350 of those names were unique names. On February 10th, we met to shortlist the names, and that committee that shortlists the names, on that committee was Heather Garrett, the trustee for the school, Trustee Jean Gray as the designate for the chair of the board, also Brian Slimko, the principal of Milton 11, Superintendent Jackie Newton, and we also had the pleasure of having a parent from Anjay MacArthur, Sidaf Ali, who has children that will be going to the new school when it opens. So after reviewing the names, we are putting forward 5 names, as you can see in the report, for your consideration. The shortlisted names are in alphabetical order, and they are, first of all, Dr. D.H. Aikenhead. This name was fully supported by Dr. Aikenhead's family. They are delighted that his name is going forward. He's a former family physician in Milton for more than 40 years, delivered thousands of babies, was renowned in the area for his compassion and quite a beloved physician. He also served in many leadership roles within the community as the chief of staff at Milton District Hospital, as well as a coroner. After his retirement, he gained his U.S. medical license so he could provide medical care to low-income residents in the small rural Florida community where he resided in the winter. He also traveled to St. Vincent and Haiti, participating in vaccine clinics and providing medical care. So his name has come forward, and we have had Dr. Aiken's name come forward before. As you know from the delegation tonight, we also have J. Michael Ledwith's name to come forward, who, as you heard in the delegation, was a business owner and community leader in Milton for many, many years, 6 decades, where he opened a small grocery store that grew to become a downtown landmark. He was served as mayor for Milton. He was very active in the Rotary Club, served on numerous boards, including the Hospital Board, the Milton School Board, as it was known, between 1950 and 1956, and also was the president and a board member of the Evergreen Cemetery for more than 25 years. He has received numerous recognitions for his contributions to the community as Citizen of the Year and Lifetime Achievement Awards from the Chamber of Commerce and Senior Citizen of the Year Award. The third name that we are bringing forward is Milton Meadows. The school name the school is located in West Milton on an open tract of land resembling a meadow. It's a large open field or meadow, and when discussing the name, the members of the committee felt that the alliteration of the name had a pleasing sound and that it was an appropriate reflection of the landscape surrounding the school. The next name is Milton Village, which the school is located on Kovacic Boulevard, which is closely located to the proposed Milton Education Village. The Milton Education Village will be an integrated leading integration of academic institutions, providing a mix of opportunities for young people to learn on the job and forward-thinking businesses to leverage local students and talent. In June 2021, it was announced that Wilfrid Laurier University and Conestoga College will be providing educational programs at the Milton Education Village. I'm going to add some more information at the end of my presentation because I provided you with a map as well. I wanted to add some other information to that one, but I do want to talk about the fifth name first, and that is Rattlesnake Point. It is Rattlesnake Point is one of the parks that is part of Conservation Halton, and it's located on the Niagara Escarpment in Milton. The origin of the name for Rattlesnake Point is probably in reference to a time when the Massasauga rattlesnake was common in the region, or from the snake-like path that cuts glaciers through the cut by glaciers, I should say, through along the edges of the Niagara Escarpment, which is a UNESCO World Biosphere Reserve and a protected landform that forms a ridge that can be seen from the school's location. Also, I should add, of course, that Mike Ledwith's family fully supported his name going forward too. I forgot to mention that. The map that I provided, that Gail shared with all trustees prior to our meeting, shows the location of the next Milton schools that will be built. So I've done Trustee Roca had requested a map, so I got the planning department to create that. When that was created, it came to my attention that the fourth name, Milton Village, when our committee deliberated with names, we understood that Milton, the location of Milton 11 was going to be the closest school to the Milton Village Education Village, which is that hatched area on the map that you have. In fact, there is although it has not been purchased or it has not been funded, there is a school site within the Milton Education Village, and I wanted to make you aware of that. It has not been purchased. It could end up being Milton number 15, which of course you can see on your map has not been designated yet, if that is developed. And we don't have funding for that, of course, and we've not applied for funding, and it is not determined if it will be built at this time. All of that timing is to be determined, but we are holding that site according to our planning department, just in case. So I wanted to make you aware of that, that there is a proposal in the tertiary plan that there would be a school within the Milton Education Village. So that's information that you need for your deliberations. And I think that's all the information that I have for my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions as well. Trustee Garrett's and Superintendent Newton were also on the committee, as well as Trustee Gray. So we were all in attendance if you have any other questions.
Thank you. Trustee Garrett or Trustee Gray, did you want to add anything before we ask whether we have any questions?
I can add that I haven't broached any subject, this subject with any of my constituents or townspeople. I mean, I'm on top of the social media and what people want to hear in terms of a name. But I thought in the next week or so, I would really put it out there and start asking the question and see really what the community is hoping for. Honestly, it doesn't make sense now that we found out that Milton 15 could possibly happen at some point, and I can tell you that it's going to happen because our town is growing ridiculously. So it doesn't make sense to have a name Milton Village when there's going to be one in the village. I don't know. So that, we've got a little hindsight here. We might want to think about that.
Thank you. Superintendent Newton, I see you're on too. I don't know if you have anything further to add.
Thank you through the chair. It was a very robust process. I'd like to really thank Marnie Denton for her work on this piece, along with Heather Francie. We've used our normal processes for advertising and encouraging the community to raise their names. Both Trustee Garrett's and I believe that Milton is getting name fatigued, if you like, with opening a school every year. So sometimes the names that are coming forward are the repetitive names that we see. And so that's why we've presented what we feel the community has asked us to consider. And we look forward to the dialogue that's upcoming in the next couple of weeks. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Trustee Rocha, you have a question. You're muted, Trustee Rocha.
My apologies. Through you, Chair. Question for, well, first, thank you, Ms. Denton, for providing the map. It's made me, I like having a visual, especially if we're looking at geographical names. It's always great to see where the geographical references are being made. And in this case, by providing the map, I have eliminated one name from the list, so I'm down to 4. I heard you say that, I heard Superintendent Newton say that some names have come to the board several times. Do you have that information available? Which of these 4 names have appeared at board meetings for prior school namings? Thank you.
I would have to go back and do a more thorough check of the board reports. I believe that the name Mike Ledwith has came forward for Angie MacArthur Public School when we opened that. I think it was 2013, and also for Craig Kielberger in 2011, I believe. But I need to check on that. And I know I have seen Dr. Aikenhead's name, and I know of him from many submissions that we've had over the years. I'm not sure. I'd have to check to see if his name came forward on some board reports. I can get that information for you, and I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Thank you. I appreciate all the work you did on this committee. I also look forward to hearing Trustee Garrett's from your community as to really what the community wants. I think that's always a really important piece to look at when we're trying to determine the names that best suit our schools. So again, thank you very much for everyone's work on the committee, and we look forward to the conversation as Trustee Newton said in dialogue that occur over the next couple of weeks. Thank you very much. Okay, now we are on to item 6.2.2, Trustee Distribution and Determination, report number 22028, presented by Superintendent Naidoo, Executive Officer Gadet, and Director Ennis.
Through the chair, I'm going to turn it over to General Manager Thibault and to Superintendent Naidoo.
Thank you. And through the chair to all trustees, this report brings a few options for trustees. As you are aware, under Regulation 412 of the Education Act, you're responsible for the determination and distribution calculations for the electoral group for the upcoming election. And there are a couple of options that are presented here that we'll go into in more details at the Committee of the Whole next week. And this report will also be coming back for approval at the next board meeting. Overall, there are no changes to the number of trustees for our region or the trustee distribution numbers within each municipality, but there are a few options that I will pass on to General Manager Thibault to give you a quick summary before our conversation next week. Thank you.
So through Chair Shuttleworth to trustees. So with regards to the options here, in previous reports you may have noticed there were far more numerous options. So what planning services did in collaboration with senior staff is really just look at options that we find are either slightly better or better achieve the results of getting the targeted electoral quotient being one electoral quotient versus one trustee as close as possible. Now, one of the challenges we had in certain municipalities, namely Burlington and Oakville, is that the number of trustees versus the number of wards and the population within those wards don't necessarily align, which can create some of that disparity between a geographic area that may not be able to have as much of a high electoral quotient. So in the last time we did this, we got legal counsel and they said, try to stay within a 20% margin, which currently the status quo in many regards does meet that, but in certain wards, it's just not been able to be achieved. And this is primarily within the, again, in the town of Oakville and Burlington. So what we've done here is what we've presented are alternative options that do meet that criteria, but what's different is that we're combining two geographic areas so that the math works out. So it's 2 electoral quotients versus 2 trustees, which is something a little bit new. So those are some new options we've presented in Oakville. Milton, the only alternative is instead of doing a north-south divide, we're doing an east-west, which provides a slightly better distribution. But again, given the minor nature of the change, I'll leave it up to you as to our discussion next at the Committee of the Whole meeting as to whether or not that's a change that's valuable for the next election. So here are just a few options that we're presenting as potentials that could be considered. The status quo, as far as I'm concerned, is fine. It hasn't substantially changed from our 2018 numbers that were approved in the last election, but happy to have further discussion on this next week and gather more information in the comments and maybe dive deeper into the options that we have presented here tonight. And also note we've provided a little bit of an app widget you can access on either your computer or mobile devices where you can play around with the different options and see how they look. So again, happy to take some feedback on that as well. I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you. Trustee Grabetz.
Thank you very much. And I really appreciated the visual app that you provided. Very helpful. But the question I have is something that I was wondering, if you know this information, if you don't know this information right now, is there a way for you to find out this information? And I'm of course, being a Burlington trustee, very focused on Burlington, and just wondering if you've heard anything about any possible ward changes for Burlington municipally. Just because my understanding, it's been 6 wards for quite a long time. And I don't know if there's been, I know the population hasn't really changed that much, and maybe that means there's no change, but I would hate for us to go through this whole exercise if just around the corner they, surprise announce that they're moving to a different ward system. So if you do know anything now, or if you can just let us know next week if you hear anything.
And through you, Chair Shuttleworth, to Trustee Gerbrands, I'd say at this time we would have, I'll double check and make sure, but from my understanding, they would have had to gone through that process much sooner in preparation for the municipal elections. I know the last one was a little bit messy with all the changes that were happening from what was coming down from the province, but they need to set up as well to define those boundaries, as well as for us to have the necessary information. As a comparative, if you recall, Oakville in the last round they did some ward boundary changes, and I believe Milton as well did some changes in consolidating those ward boundaries. So I think at this point we would have been notified, but that's not to say that I haven't been surprised before. So let me look into it. I'll reconfirm, and we can certainly have that discussion next week.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Trustee Reynolds.
Oh, thank you. Madam Chair, my question is regards to the distribution for Burlington in particular. Can our board amend a ward boundary to make it more equitable or balanced? Do we have that? Can we make that, make it like a boundary review, make it more balanced, or we must follow the boundaries set out by the municipality?
Through Chair Shuttleworth to Trustee Reynolds, we have to follow the ward boundaries. So we're constrained there. What we have the ability to do is to combine the wards in such a way that every ward has an electoral quotient. Maybe I should have explained that, which is a representation of the total population versus how much representation that is to a single trustee versus the total number of trustees of the board. And we're always trying to get that 1-to-1 ratio when we combine them together. So that's the ability that we have, is trying to find permutations where that makes sense, and we have a little bit of flexibility there to create these areas that we can get that representation. But as far as the wards go, you can't split a ward, but you could have multiple trustees representing a larger area. It's something that our coterminous board, as an example, has at large representation. So the whole of City of Burlington or the whole of the municipality, just to try to balance that out. But yeah, we're limited on how we combine the wards as those geographies. And sometimes, like I mentioned earlier, they don't necessarily align, or there's limited permutations that is successful in getting that 1-to-1 ratio if you're looking at a distinct representation. Hope that answers your question.
Great, thank you. Are there any further questions? Vice Chair Harrison.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Is it reasonable to suggest that the options that are selected for each municipality, that it makes most sense for them to be consistent for all of the different areas? Or is there ever a scenario where mixing and matching different ways of dividing these things up is acceptable?
So through Chair Shuttleworth to Vice Chair Harrison, just to clarify, or just make sure I understand the question, are you saying have combined geographic areas in Burlington, let's say, but have distinct representation in another?
Yes, because you've said Halton Hills, for example. Well, that's not a good example. Yes, that's what I'm asking. No,
and it's a good question. My read of the legislation is that it's silent on that. What it focuses the most on is really achieving that balance of a 1-to-1 representation. I think that's the key piece in trying to achieve, it doesn't really speak about, how you achieve that. So there's really no mention of at-large at-large representation for a municipality, insofar that as long as you're meeting that electoral quotient in that ratio, I think that's the true test. So there is some flexibility there, but I think that's the core of it is, if it's 2 trustees, then you have to have that EQ represented. So it's silent. It's not clear.
Yeah,
but consistency is, it helps when you're doing something consistently board wide as well too. So that's the other piece of it too, because then it's like, well, then why not go the whole way? So there's different ways you can look at it.
Thank you. May I just follow up to say that's exactly what I was going to get at and ask. And I think that we would need to consider, the benefits or harms of consistency, inconsistency, versus the benefits of getting closer to the 1, that quotient or ratio, if we potentially need to switch it up in one municipality and not the others. So I hope we can have more of that discussion at Committee of the Whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Reynolds. And I'm just going to draw your attention. We have 5 minutes left during this time, so hopefully we can get this done and then we'll extend to the next bits.
Just point of order. I see Trustee Garretts has raised her hand, and she's a first-time speaker.
Oh, sorry. Thank you so much. Trustee Garretts.
Thank you. Through you, just a quick comment. In Milton, as most of you know, Trustee Danielle does Ward 1 and 2, and I do Wards 3 and 4. That works, and the division is very good. It seems it's Derry Road. So it's north and south, and for now it works. And with the growth that Milton is going to have and continue to have, I think it will still work, because a lot of the new growth beyond the homes is also going to be a lot of towers, and those will be along Main Street. So that will affect the north school. So just throwing it out there for you.
And through you, Chair Shuttleworth, to Trustee Garretts, and as per the report, you'll note that we are of the same mind. I feel like Milton specifically, the option we present is just the alternative instead of in the north-south, it's an east-west. And I think that the improvement to the distribution is marginal at best. So I don't really see the need to change for the sake of that distribution. And to your point, things will change too as growth continues and phase 4 lands continue. So I think that'll be the time where I think change will be something we'll look closer to.
Thank you. Trustee Reynolds.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I was wondering if there would be perhaps if there's any way that you can identify whether there's a reason that would support a school board for not improving representation. So if we choose not to, if we choose status quo, what would be an example for not doing it? And I guess I'm referencing what I heard from Trustee L. Harrison, which was certainly, to continue the way things are for the electorate. But are there any other sort of examples or reasons in other boards that have chosen not to make a change for more equitable representation?
Through you,
Trustee Collard, I think, sorry, General Manager Tebow, I think Trustee Collard has her hand up. She might be able to give some insight.
Yes, I know quite a few areas where representation is shared. And what quite often happens is there's one trustee who ends up doing the boatload of the work because the other trustees maybe not as attentive, maybe not as approachable or perhaps been trustees longer, and so the public tends to go to that one trustee, and then the other trustee or trustees, depending on how many are sharing the ward, don't get that many calls, don't get that many emails, and so the workload on the one trustee actually gets bigger. And the other reason I would say is that workload is not always defined by the number of people who live in your ward. And you can have a lot of workload based on who is in your ward, not how many are in your ward. The other piece that I think is really important is that some areas of our board have a great number of families who are immigrants to Canada and not yet eligible to vote. And so they are still families that live in the ward, but they're not counted in the quotient because the quotient is only based on the people who can vote. So if you have a lot of people in your local area that are not eligible to vote, but they have children and they're calling you anyway because they have children in the board, you're still serving those people. So it's not just a basis of serving the elector, it should be a basis of serving everyone who lives in the community. And I think that's another important note. Also alongside what Trustee Harrison, Vice Chair Harrison said, if we're going to have mixed methods, depending on the municipality, I think that's inconsistent. And even around the board table, we might find it awkward because if something's happening at a particular school in an area that has more than one representative, who do you go to at the board table? It becomes, I think, a very confusing state when there's a mixed approach at the board table and multiple people who should be the go-to person. You don't have just one go-to person anymore. So that would be a number of reasons that are just off the top of my head.
So just quickly, we are now at 10 o'clock. Sorry, General, I know General Tebow, you took your mic off, but we're going to need to extend our time. Still on the agenda, we have the director's report, suspensions and expulsion report, and trustee question comments, committee reports. So I'm going to suggest a half an hour to start. Trustee Gerbentz?
I would second that motion.
So are we happy with going for a half an hour? Keeping our time succinct. So all those in favor, if we can go over to our votes to extension of a half an hour till 10:30. That could probably have been a unanimous consent piece, but I think, first of all, have the student trustees left? Trustee Vigilankar, Trustee Bao, I think.
Trustee Bao left, but Trustee Vigilankar is with us still.
We're then short 2 votes.
Trustee Rocha?
Okay, no, she's there. Trustee Gray? Trustee Gray?
Oliver?
Yeah, I think I submitted twice now, but I just did again.
Are you there? So that's great. The only one we are missing is Trustee Vigilankar, if she is here.
Perhaps she stepped aside.
So I'm thinking she's not. So that carries, we think unanimously. So we will continue till, as of right now, 10:30. So General Manager Thibault, did you have anything further to add on to Trustee Collard's comments?
So maybe just through you, Chair Shuttleworth, to trustees, I'd say certainly these are all things we need to discuss at our committee of the whole meeting next week. I think they're all valid reasons. Where I'm a little less concerned in all this is that at least municipally, the representation is distributed in a way that I'm comfortable with, where, you know, at least as a whole, Halton Hills 1, Milton 2, Burlington and Oakville 4 respectively, plus or minus. Like, I think that's okay. You know, if there was a significant disparity between one municipality and another, which is something I've seen in the past, I'd be more concerned. So internally, you know, it makes me less concerned. It's just, again, that threshold of 20% is harder to achieve. So I think that's all, they're all valid points to discuss and to defend the position of if we were to remain status quo. And I certainly think that's all things we can discuss at committee of the whole, so that when we come back on March 23rd, we'll have our position set, and then we can present it to the public and proceed with approvals prior to submitting to the respective agencies and municipality, lead municipality, and ministry and what have you on finalizing this. So yeah, happy to discuss more next week and then finalize our list.
Follow up, please.
Yep.
Thank you. So to continue the conversation, could I ask that that we have maybe a reflection of perhaps other boards that have had to make an amendment to one municipality and sort of the reasons that they or did not make that amendment and the reasons for not doing it. And what I'm asking is, in the report, the legal recommendation was that you want to get as close to an equitable representation in each of your ward boundaries. So my concern is really reflecting when we do have a misalignment, that we communicate the reasons specifically why we are continuing with that imbalance to our constituents. I think we owe them that clarification. So I was wondering if across the province or in other municipalities where that has occurred, what was the reflections and why? Because certainly if we continue with the recommendation, or if we look at perhaps option 1 in Burlington, I would like to know sort of what the precedent that has been set in other communities.
And I'll certainly try to reach out as many as I can. I know it's a short time between now and Wednesday. Perhaps what we can do too is leave it with me, and I'll see if I can get you something, so at least it provides you a little bit of certainty on you know, how we proceed and communicate to the community as to why. But I think the reasons, again, the legislation is pretty narrow in what the task is. So I think, you know, as we just need to support our decision as to why we do what we do, and then see where that leads us. But yes, certainly we can, we'll see what we can collect for next week.
Great, thank you so much, General Manager Thibault. Awesome, so thank you so much. We are now up to item 6.3 or 6.3.1, suspension expulsion update, report number 22029. Superintendent Podberg.
Thank you. Through trustees, through the chair to all trustees. This is a report we bring twice a year. And this particular report looks at first semester data around suspension and expulsions. It is just totals at this point. We will be getting into I expect more disaggregation of the data around some of the student census information we have in future reports. We're just going to implement that separately right now. So per previous reports, this is just totals right now, broken down by short-term suspensions and longer-term suspensions, and by elementary and secondary. This report, I've included 2018-19 school year. which was our last, I'm going to say, normal or typical school year, where we would have had typical suspension data to look at. So you'll notice in this particular report, suspensions are up year over year, but comparatively to the last regular years we've had, they're still quite reduced. I think that's good news. Anecdotally, we've heard from other boards that's not the case, and we've heard that, I speak to a little bit in the report, the hypothesis we had and many boards are experiencing is that kids were returning more dysregulated and higher levels of suspension expulsions. We're not experiencing that compared to our 18-19 numbers. So that's good news. I would say we did a number of things around just mental health and returning kids to school that I think were smart and strategic, clever moves in terms of focus on relationships and building those and just really making those crucial connections with our students before necessarily getting right down to the work. And I think our staff have taken very enlightened approaches in this, and I would optimistically say that's what's led to some of this data. So I do see this as a good news piece, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any questions from trustees? Seeing none, Superintendent Patrick, I have one question. So it's, as you said, it's just general, it's numbers. So what I'm wondering is, how do we use this? So you said this is an optimistic piece. How do we use it to further inform better practice going forward?
Thank you for the question, and through you to all trustees. It's we do look at this for trends. We have certainly able to break this down further. So we have data by even suspension codes and trends like that. So we are looking at that kind of data. We just in terms of our programming, our messages getting out. For example, this year we are hoping to create much greater awareness around our code of conduct, and we've heard that through students and student voice, that 50% of our kids didn't even know we had a code of conduct. So we've really taken that on. We asked every teacher to do some lessons and exposure to the code of conduct, talking about it. So then this data helps us to say, are we increasing that? Are we seeing greater awareness of it? Or some of our efforts around supporting kids with mental health, some of our behavioral self-regulation pieces, are they working? And in terms of just looking at that, so totals tell you one thing. We also can look for trends within suspension codes, grade levels, for example, that type of thing. So it's helpful. Using our student census data will add a new level of disaggregation. The way forward, right in the plan, talks about safe schools looking at some of the racialized students and the suspension rates within that data. So that work is really just beginning now. We're looking at a small subset of initial data. It's from the 2020-21 school year, so those numbers are really anomalous right now, but it still reveals some trends that we can look at. And does our work around mitigation, how is that working? Is our work around efforts around building skills in kids and lagging skills, how is that working? And if numbers are going up, we'd certainly be looking at different things, but what we're doing seems to be working. We're looking to even go deeper. And for example, things around harmful language, bullying work, we always want to go deeper into that. And so we're planning some PD, whole school, whole board PD around that, for example, next year.
Thank you. And a follow-up. So just quickly, so when you were talking to that, so you were talking to code of conduct and sort of the idea of students' knowledge. What about staff? So I'm just wondering, as far as, because a suspension or expulsion is a reaction, right? So that's what this. So I'm just wondering how when we're digging deeper, are we not only looking at the students' behavior, but also the staff behavior?
Absolutely. So we do an annual training every year for staff around safe schools. Happens beginning of the year under health and safety kind of provisions. So we always have a chance to review that with staff. And also by asking every teacher to teach about the code of conduct to kids, we're obviously getting a bump in staff awareness, because to teach something you therefore have to dig in, look at the lessons, digest, and then teach, and then bring it forward to your kids in an age appropriate way. So we feel like we're getting a real bump there as well. So we try both of those.
All right, great, thank you. And again, so my other question was about the specifics, but I know you talked about it earlier, so thank you very much. Does anybody else have any questions regarding this report? Okay, again, so thank you so much for this report. We really appreciate all the information. Okay, we are now up to item 6.4. Are there any notices of motion for this evening? Awesome, seeing none, we're now up to 6.5, the director's report. Director Ennis, you have two items, the COVID update and other. Would you like to proceed with your report, please?
Thank you, Chair Shuttleworth. I'm going to ask Superintendent Taha if he would give us the update on COVID.
Good evening. Thank you, Director Ennis, through you, Chair Shuttleworth, to the rest of the board. Very briefly, we continue to follow the direction of the Ministry of Public Health with respect to vaccination protocols and masking protocols. Our vaccination rates continue to hold steady for our district at 90.3% for the entire employees and 96% for our permanent staff. With respect to booster shots, which continues to be a requirement to report to the ministry on, we are at 45.3% of our staff have affirmed that they are triple vaccinated, and that's an increase of 1.3%. Masking protocols continue to be as set up by the Ministry of Public Health for staff and students. And I do understand that things are in flux, and we continue to monitor those changes and direction that we may get from the Ministry or Public Health. And happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Superintendent Taha? Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to now ask Superintendent Blackwell. Give us an update, anything from your end.
Great. Thanks, Director Ennis. Through the chair to trustees. A couple of updates from public health and COVID protocols. As families may or may not be aware, there was a change to travel restrictions that came into effect on February 28th at 12:01 a.m. And what that means for families that are traveling internationally is for students that are younger than 12 years of age that are unvaccinated, they no longer have to isolate from school for 14 days upon return if they are asymptomatic. So that is a federal guidance change. If you traveled and returned prior to that date and time, the 14 days is still needs to be adhered to in terms of attending school. The screening tool was updated today, and the travel section has also been updated. We anticipate some further guidance coming to us around some of the changes to some of our protocols. We have nothing in hand at this time, and the next time we see you, we will have probably some information to share. And as usual, when we receive information in any form from the Ministry of Education, we share that with families in a very timely fashion as fast as we can get it out. You will also recognize that some of our community restrictions have changed. So when we talk about capacity limits, in our schools, in Halton and Ontario. That has implications for some of our spaces, our rental spaces, for example. The capacity limits follow the same restrictions as the Ontario guidelines. So there are no longer capacity limits in those spaces. And that's outside of our school, but our schools are rented. The other thing that is on it's related and not really related in terms of meeting with Public Health Weekly. We have talked about the immunization, the non-COVID immunizations that usually take place within our schools every year. There's been a huge pause on those. So we are working closely with Public Health to develop a phased process to catch up on vaccinations, especially for our grades 7 and 8s. We will have a plan developed with Public Health and our coterminous board that we'll be able to share with families and make those accessible as well. And that will extend for the next year and a bit. So that's all I have at this time.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Superintendent? I have one.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I have one. Sorry. So this is actually following up from the delegation that happened earlier. And I'm just wondering, because one of the things that was spoken of was the idea of mask breaks. And I'm just wondering, and this also came up on the minister's call on Monday. So I'm just wondering what our schools' rules are for masking outside and at lunch and during physical activities.
Through the chair, to the chair. So it's evolving actually. You'll recall that at one point masking for all physical activity in our schools occurred when we returned in January, and that has changed and evolved since in the last month or so. We also have recognized that any high intensity activity cannot be done safely indoors with masks on. There was a pause on those activities. Those have resumed. That has been communicated to our families. Outdoor masking, it has also lessened. One of the things that our schools have done very well is around the physical distancing and recognizing when kids cannot be spaced out. For those of you that live near a school or have seen a school lately, the school fields are pretty icy. Kids are very congested on what we call often is the blacktop, the very small space where they are able to be salted and cleared off. So long story short, outdoor masking has been removed as a requirement, which is following the guidance from the ministry and as well as Public Health. Where masking may be occurring still, it may have something to do with physical distancing. So if families have questions, they should connect with their child's school because there have been some changes. And I'm not sure I covered all of your questions around masking, Trustee Shuttleworth. Lunch. So students have and continue to be able to remove masks at lunch to eat. And mask breaks, I think, was the other piece, right? And mask breaks have continued to be part of the conversation around ensuring that happens for students during the day. Again, sometimes the kids go outside in the cold weather and they don't want to take their masks off. It has a different purpose, but so mask breaks our schools are working with masking breaks throughout the day. And again, if there are questions or concerns, please reach out to your child's principal, have the conversation, find out what that looks like because it has changed within the school. I know there was a lot of concern initially when we returned a year and a half ago or a little while ago. We'll find that our practices are very different and our kids are and our staff are very versed in them and following those protocols. I'd encourage families to reach out if they have questions.
Great, thank you very much. Trustee Oliver has popped on the list.
Yes, thank you. Through your chair, question to Superintendent Blackwell. I'm curious, have we done away with the segregating of cohorts at recess on the blacktop and having designated areas for a particular period of time? Has that been done away with? And are students allowed to mix and mingle and use any portion of the outdoor space?
Through the chair to Trustee Oliver, the cohorting outdoors for elementary schools is still in the guidance document that we are to follow. We've had conversations with public health and the ministry and shared that with the ministry as something to consider. It may be one of the updates that we anticipate are coming. We have not seen the memo from the ministry yet, but it's our understanding that there is further information coming to schools around practices.
Okay, and follow up, please.
Sure.
So in the past, some schools had designated particular blacktop areas for a particular cohort, and they stayed in that for days and weeks and maybe months. Has that changed? Are students allowed more flexibility, even as a cohort, to move, to change it up on the blacktop from day to day?
So if I, through the chair to Trustee Oliver, are you saying remaining in cohorts but a different viewpoint? So on the field one day, and again, that's a school-based decision, and schools would determine what that looks like on a regular basis. So it might be something to reach out. It's a great opportunity for kids to have some input in designing what that looks like, what the spaces look like. Obviously, different spaces throughout the day are a good opportunity. So I don't know what it looks like in every school. They could have the field for some part, and then it could be a blacktop for other parts. Again, right now it's really difficult because these fields are very icy, and most of us are blacktop recesses lately. And then after the ice comes the mud, right? If we recall what it looks like outside in our school grounds.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent Blackwell. I'm going to ask General Manager Thibault to give us an update on capital priorities.
Thank you, Director Ennis, and through you, Chair Shuttleworth, to trustees this evening. So as you recall I'm just trying to load up my email here. So you'll recall on February 16th, we came to the board with a priority ranking for capital priorities, a little bit of a hurry up offense given the timing of the memo and getting the business cases in for February 25th and only having one board meeting. So at that time, we had provided a list of priorities, a total of 5 different projects. In those 5 different projects, we had 3 existing resubmissions that we had done as part of the 2021 capital priorities submission. And then we had 2 new projects, namely an additional 6 classroom addition to Milton 13 as kind of a scope change to accommodate for future enrollment and future holding, and Paul A. Fisher. In terms of the order, we had Oakville number 5 as number 1. We had Milton District High School as number 2, Post Corner as number 3, and Paul A. Fisher as well as Milton 13 as 4 and 5 respectively. So since that time, we had numerous conversations with municipalities. We had them with the ministry, we had them with the developers, and so forth. And we amended the overall project ranking, effectively pushing the 2 new projects to the top of the list. Because there's some more immediacy, and I think there's a good chance of getting those approved. And we pushed Oakville 5 a little further down the list because of concerns we had with regards to access to the site and developability of the site in relation to when we get the funding and when we'd be able to go out to tender, which our concern is that if they're too distant, then we're going to end up in another situation where, the ultimate tendered amount will be too far gone from the benchmark, which may cause us to have to find alternate sources of funding to bridge that gap. So for that, we reduced it in our priority ranking because that community that new school is based on that community being built anyway. And we have Oakville 3 to take some of that growth off of, or the pressures off of the school south of Dundas. So we decided to push that down the list as well. And then with regards to the two other priorities that we had, Milton District High School as well as Posts Corner, those ones we also bumped down the list as well because of discussions with the ministry and them not necessarily meeting certain tests. Regardless, though, we have 5 good business cases in front of the ministry, and they're all viable, even though they may have some challenges. And happy to take any questions with regards to why we updated the list and changed the priority rankings and next steps on this.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any questions regarding the capital priorities? Great, thank you very much, General Manager Thibault. Just quickly, Director Ennis, we have now hit the 10:30 mark, so I was just checking. Vice Chair Harrison, do we have any questions from the public?
We do not.
We do not. Okay, so really, there's just these last couple bits of the director's report. Do we have anything from OBSPA and questions and comments? Director Ennis, do we think we can get through it in 10 minutes? 10 minutes?
Yes.
Is that it?
Yes,
Vice Chair Harrison? Is that a lofty goal or is it good?
Let's do 15.
15, okay. So an extension of 15 minutes. Do I have a sec, or would anybody like to put that on the floor? Trustee Gray. And Trustee Gribetz. Okay, I guess we'll go to the voting form because I can't see everybody on the screen. So all those in favor for a 15-minute extension, please. Yes, that carries unanimously. Wonderful. All right. Director Ennis, off you go.
Thank you so much. I'm going to ask Associate Director Bogue if he would just give us a quick update on remote learning options for 22-23.
Thanks, Director Ennis, and through the chair to trustees. Last week we received some direction from the ministry around that all school boards were to provide a remote learning option for next year. This is not to be confused with the mandatory e-learning requirements. This is remote learning, which is really online synchronous learning. And within the HDSB, we tend to talk more about it as virtual learning. Our current models, as trustees know, is we have our secondary kids congregated in a virtual secondary school, and our elementary virtual classes are scattered throughout. The majority of our elementary schools house one or more elementary virtual classes. So we're in the process right now of planning for next year. We're leaning to a similar model that to what we have this year. So a centralized virtual secondary school and decentralized, if you like, elementary model. But it's really dependent on the numbers of kids that are requesting. We think we're going to have less interest next year. We're hoping that next year is a more typical year and our kids are more back in person, but we will need to find out. So from that perspective, we need to do some reach out, and we're in the midst of looking at a communication plan and a reach out to families to find out what their preferences will be next year, so that we can move along with our planning. So that should happen fairly quickly over the next couple of weeks, that work in terms of starting to reach out to families. So I think that's really it. Just wanted to keep trustees in the loop in terms of where we are, and as more developments occur, we can share more with trustees.
Wonderful, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Associate Director Bogue on our virtual distant learning options? Seeing none, you may continue, Director Ennis.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have a couple of good news items, and the first one, Superintendent Patrick Barrett, go ahead.
Yes, it's never too late for some good news. Our communications department, as you know, consists of Manager Marnie Denton, Senior Communications Officers Jason Meisner, Heather Francie, and Andrew Brinton, along with our graphic designer, Rita Radis. They continually work to promote and educate our community and staff around all aspects of the great work that we do in this board. I'm pleased to report that this department has won 4 National Bravo Awards, which are awarded each year by the Canadian Association of Communications in Education. Just for your interest, we're very proud of them. They won an award of merit for our work on the Free Menstrual Products Initiative. They won a special COVID-19 award along with Kevin Raposo, who's somewhere out there with us tonight. Congratulations, Kevin, for our HDSB Still Connected work. And 2 of their highest level awards, their awards of excellence, we won for the launch around the Way Forward campaign, and they're recognizing particular days of significance that we do all throughout the work, which received awards of excellence. So I think this is a nice validation of the tremendous work they do at a national level, and just thought worth celebrating for a few minutes tonight. So congratulations to all of them.
That's awesome. That's so, as you said, never too late for good news. So you've revved us up a little bit. Congratulations to our communications department. That's great. Thank you for sharing.
And we have more good news. I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Barnes.
Yes, more good news. So through you, Chair, to the trustees, just wanted to make everyone aware of a good news announcement regarding one of our former graduates who's participating in the Paralympics. And the Canadian Paralympic Committee announced on Tuesday that Greg Westlake would be one of the team's flag bearers for the 2022 Beijing opening ceremony event, which begins this Friday morning at 6:30 a.m. Greg is a former captain of the Canadian para hockey team, looking to earn his 4th medal in 5th games. And this Thomas A. Blakelock graduate helped Canada win gold in 2006 before missing the podium in 2010 and rebounding for bronze in 2014. He was also part of the 2018 squad, which won silver. So just wanted to take a moment to share that great news, and hopefully everyone will be able to watch the Paralympics.
Oh, great. That's wonderful. Oh, this is a great way to end this meeting. These are wonderful stories. Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent Barnes. I see Vice Cheryl Harrison beaming because I know Teague like watching. Very close to her heart. So awesome. Thank you so much. Director Ennis.
Thank you so much, Chair Shuttleworth. And I just want to close by saying thanks to staff of the HDSB, to the senior staff who are just so responsive to our schools, to our school leaders for the great job that they keep doing. I know that they are exhausted, but I can tell you when I visit schools, I see a lot of joy. They love being in the schools in spite of all the challenges that we've had this year. The teachers, the staff, the administrators are doing incredible work. And so I want to just commend them for all the great work that they are doing. And I just lastly want to just say congrats to Cindy and Ethan for their win for next year, for Trustee Oliver and Reynolds for their great work with the students, Trustee Bolk for supporting them. And I've met both Cindy and Ethan in person. And so, I'm just so excited about the work ahead. So thank you so much. That concludes my report for tonight.
Great, thank you. And Trustee Bogue, you got a promotion.
Did I say Trustee Bogue?
You did. That's okay. We all do it at least once. So great. Thank you so much, Director Ennis. So moving right along, under communications from the chair, there are nine items that are attached to the agenda for this evening that I would encourage you to have a look through. There's some interesting reads there. And that brings us up to 6.7, which is committee reports. And we haven't received any electronically, but I was wondering if there are any committee reports for this evening. Trustee Collard.
Yes, the audit committee met last Tuesday, And trustees all received the package for both public and private session of the audit committee. But I just wanted to highlight a couple of the items from that meeting. We received the financial reporting of school boards in Ontario, the board report on budget development and the schedule from Superintendent Naidoo, and the timelines for financial reporting. We also received had 3 action items coming out of that meeting, which one of which we dealt with earlier this evening with the recommendation for the external auditor, but also we received the terms of reference for the mental health and well-being audit and the regional internal audit status report. And all things were looking very good for Halton. The regional internal audit manager is very happy with the work that we're doing here in Halton. And I wanted to convey that to trustees that she was very pleased with the number of outstanding items that we have compared to other boards in the area. So well done to staff, and good news for trustees in our role in governance. And if you have any questions, please, Roxana or Superintendent Naidoo is ready and waiting.
Director Ennis?
My apologies. I just wanted to update the board on, oh, sorry, it's not related to this. So please finish. Go ahead, Superintendent Naidoo.
No, she was just here if there's any questions. So does anybody have any questions regarding audit from Superintendent Naidoo? I'm seeing shakings of head. So Director Ennis, go ahead.
I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you to a couple of staff who have told us that they're retiring. First one is Manager Gail Gordon-Maker. Of course, this being her last official board meeting before she retires. She's going to continue to work with us. She's agreed to continue to support us until we've backfilled that position. And so say congratulations to Gail, even though she's going to continue to work with us. And also want to say congratulations to Superintendent Truffin, who has submitted his letter of retirement. And I say congratulations, Gord, and all the very best on the next leg of your journey. So congrats to them both.
Yes, thank you. On behalf of all the trustees as well, we also congratulate both General Manager Gortmaker and Superintendent Truffin. General Manager Gortmaker, I know you're not gone yet. I had to talk with you this morning. So although you officially retired, you're coming back for a little while. So I'm happy to say we're not actually saying goodbye just yet. And I know that Superintendent Truffin as well is around for a little while longer. So I'm happy that they're here to still celebrate after their announcements of leaving. So thank you. Okay. Vice Chair Harrison, sorry, are there any trustee questions and comments? Seeing none, and I'm just going to come back and double check with Vice Chair Harrison. There are no comments or questions from the public this evening?
No, they're not.
Great. All right, so as we are ending this meeting, I just, Trustee Vigilankara.
I'm so sorry, my Wi-Fi has been really bad. But I did have a trustee question.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Thank you. This is directed to the director. So recently there's been a petition going around requesting that the HDSB make a specific policy to address sexual harassment and sexual assault and harassment in schools. And this work was being led by a student from Nelson High School, and specifically a student who had briefly shared their experience of sexual assault in school. They shared how they felt that there was a lack of clarity surrounding the process and the protocol to report these kinds of things. And I know we've had discussions about this previously with our senators. And so I was just hoping that you could maybe share your response to what was shared in the petition. There was nearly 1,000 student signatures on it, as well as maybe highlight some of the existing policies that do exist and the resources that students can use in schools again, one facing something like sexual assault or sexual harassment. Thanks.
Thank you for the question, Trustee Vidalankara. To be clear, issues of sexual assault, all our school administrators know quite clearly how to respond to that. That is not something that's ambiguous at all. We understand that some incidents might have been unfortunate in terms of how some things were interpreted and some things that were said, but there is no lack of clarity about how we respond to sexual assault. And so I'm wondering if Superintendent Padre-Barrick would want to just weigh in and speak to this a little further.
Yes, I'm happy to. Trustee Vidalankara, there are explicit parts of our Safe Schools policies and approaches. Sexual assault garners specific mention. It certainly requires a number of things. So for one, it would be a mandatory suspension, potentially leading to expulsion. It would trigger a host of supports and referrals. It garners a violent incident report in a Students Ontario student record, mandatory police calls. So these are already specified in our Safe Schools policies, specifically our suspension and expulsion ones. And the response is very, like I said, very scripted and specific. It's one of the more serious charges we have on there, and it really compels principals to act. We've had several this year where we have done just that and acted. So I would understand certainly at the granular student level, they may not be aware that this is already entrenched in policy and really admin procedures more necessarily, but part of our Safe Schools policy. And as Director Ennis notes, I think principals know very well what to do and how to respond. We have Safe Schools social workers that are immediately dispatched to schools as well to support principals, make immediate referrals because of the serious nature of it, support victims in that sense. And so it's quite a comprehensive response out there. And incidents are very complex and different, and we're always working with police. They have a special sexual assault unit called CASA, who is invariably called in and take over investigations. So they're not done at the street officer level, but there is a specialized unit for it. So it's treated with a high level of diligence and sensitivity all around. So policy-wise, I think we're there already.
I appreciate those answers, and I recognize that staff are trained and certainly principals are trained and know the resources and know how to respond. But again, I think what this petition is highlighting is that there's like a gap between what students are actually aware of when it comes to the protocols. And so, even if we're not accepting their recommendation to make another policy, even if our policies are good enough, I certainly think there needs to be some sort of educational piece for students so that they know explicitly how they can report something like this in their schools or what the process is like. Because I think, as the student has shared in their experience, they felt really confused and unsure and unsupported in reporting. And again, that's one experience, but certainly other students have signed this petition and agree that they don't understand how they can do that. So I just wanted to bring that up. I appreciate those answers. Thanks.
Yeah, and your words resonate, and there's always more we can do. I mentioned in an earlier answer that we are highlighting aspects of the code of conduct. That could certainly be an area we do further enhancement on and awareness around as well. We're planning on, we have some work we're refreshing and putting out around reporting incidents around Safe Schools nature and creating, enhancing our bullying tool to be more encompassing of hate, sexual assault. And so that work is pending for September. So hopefully I'll have more info for you on that, as well as for all trustees as Superintendent Barnes, Etoff, and I are collaborating on that work right now. And I think you'll find it gets more at that as well.
Thank you. That's really good to hear. Yeah, because like ultimately, like students need to know how these policies actually impact them. So I appreciate that.
100% agree.
Vice Chair Harrison.
Director Ennis has his hand up, probably on this topic.
Yes, thank you so much. I just wanted to say to Trustee Vidal-Ankara that no student should really feel confused about what we are doing to address issues of sexual assault. That should be clear. And if we need to do a better job to make sure that all our school leaders understand clearly what our policy and procedures state, then we need to double check what we're doing and make sure that we're crystal clear with our student population. And this has come up a couple of times so far this year, where there's a gap between what we believe we're doing and what we know we're doing and what students understand. So there is work to be done, and so we appreciate that.
Thank you. Vice Chair Harrison.
Thank you. And through you, Madam Chair, I just want to say that due to what I think is internet connectivity issues tonight, I refreshed and there were in fact some questions and comments from the public. So I believe I can summarize them in fairly short order, if that's your pleasure.
Okay, so we've already exceeded our 15-minute piece. Are we happy? So really all that's left are the public questions and comments. Anyone have a suggestion?
Just a point of order that it says around public questions is that at the discretion of the chair or vice chair, they can be deferred to the next meeting.
So maybe, are there any, Vice Chair Harrison, that are of sort of more consequence for this evening?
Here's what I'll say in brief, is that 2 comments were submitted in agreement with the delegation that was talking about masking. One comment was saying, congratulations, Board of Trustees, for the collegial way that you conduct yourselves along with senior staff in these meetings. And then the last one was a question related to, it sounds like boundaries. There's a closer school that the student could attend, but they're attending a further school. So it sounds like a boundary thing. So maybe I can write back to that person and direct them towards a staff person to have that conversation with.
That sounds awesome. Trustee Collard, I saw your hand pop up, but it went away. So I think that brings us to the end of our meeting. Before we go, I would like to take a moment to recognize the difficult times that some of our students with ties and family in the Ukraine are going through. The HDSB stands unequivocally with the people of Ukraine, and our hopes are that a peaceful solution is arrived at very quickly. So just know our thoughts are with you all. So thank you so much. And with that, we have exhausted our agenda, and I call this meeting adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you very much.